Okay, so this is Merdeka Laut means sea warrior. Some of these, I will show you a video with them speaking later, and it'll be in Malay, but there will be translation. So these are the fishermen that I work with. There's actually about 40 of them. We are based at this jetty. It's called Pengkalan Sungai Cik Manan. So it's the Cik Manan River jetty, where all these fishermen are based. So just to elaborate on the community as was raised just now, this fishing jetty is unique compared to other jetties because usually it is one village, one jetty. But this is a replacement jetty because a port landed on the community in the 80s, and so 6 jetties had to be removed and replaced. So this was the jetty that was built by the port. But in building the jetty, of course, they did not get land approval, they did not take proper bearings, they just put in the money to build the jetty and then they left it there. There was a fishing association that was supposed to help the community because the assumption is the community doesn't know how to do it, take care of the jetty and all of this. So I landed here in 2007, and my intention was just to teach the children of this community about seagrass and mangroves that they have there. On paper, I am a seagrass human researcher. So on paper, I'm a conservation scientist, but I am transdisciplinary because my basic degree was in business marketing and my master's was in applied linguistics, and I'm teaching cert. But my PhD was in science, so I'm very messed up. And I write now on artisanal fisheries and participatory methods and stuff like this, so nothing related to any of my fields. But as you mentioned, the wonderful thing is everything's mushed together in this cake that is me. So this is what comes out. So these are the guys that I represent, and I just want to acknowledge that everything I know about the Terbau Strait or the Johor Strait is really because of them. I study them, they are my guinea pigs and my specimens, but really all of my knowledge about the place and the space is for them. So when I speak, it is in honor of them and their history and their battle to preserve this place for their future if they have one. The thing that affects my positionality and that I don't recommend is I married one of the specimens. So the leader of this organization, Shela, who's here but in the hotel, is now my husband. He's the one right at the end over there. It's the same kind of pointer. What else there, this one? Yeah, so when you marry your specimen, that means you are stuck there forever for as long as marriage lasts. So that's why I've been here for 18 years. Sometimes I want to run away, but I'm still there. So yeah, so that's the positionality. So from an outsider, I became a sort of an insider, but you never really truly become an insider. I might know the context, but I'm never one of them. Not necessarily by choice, although I don't know if I really want to be, so then it becomes very complicated, but I'll speak about that as we go, but also keeping in mind the reflection points later. So this is what I'll talk about, but coming back to the community at our jetty, there's 36 licensed fishermen. There's more unlicensed fishermen because fishing licenses for near-shore fishing is limited. Within our Mukim, which means sub-district of 6 villages, actually 9 if you count the smaller ones, there are about 178 licensed fishermen, again many more who fish without licenses. Our program, which is called My Community Perikanan, this is a fisheries registered organization. It's complicated, I will explain a bit more. But the Merdeka Laut group of fishermen includes the fishermen from our jetty, but also fishermen from other jetties who come to us because we give them better prices for their fish. But they don't necessarily park at our jetty. So they go to the boss, whose name is Lan, and they tell him, we want to send to you, and so they become part of our Merdeka Laut program, and they become active in all the other things that we do. So this is roughly what I'm going to talk about. But again, I'm here to represent them, because that's what I do. So this is where we are in the southwest of Johor. We are literally right under the second link bridge. I live in Johor and I work in Singapore, so I take the bus across and back daily when I have class. Usually when I'm going to work, that bridge doesn't look like that, it's usually jammed. But the fishermen will fish under it and laugh at me as they move on and I'm stuck there. So we are actually in a space that is like surrounded by development. The Singapore side is a very narrow strait. Some parts of this strait is only 850 meters wide. With reclamation now, I think some parts are going down to 600. The widest is 2 kilometers, and even that's not sure because both sides keep reclaiming. In spite of all the industry, the reclamation, the development, the housing, we do have many endangered species. We have an amazing seagrass habitat. Again, I'm a seagrass researcher, so I'm biased. We have mangroves, what's left of it, and we do have animals. I will show you a list later very quickly, I'm not sure you can see it, of the endangered species that we have. This is just some of it. So Club Alami is the umbrella organization that the Merdeka Laut, the Sea Warriors, functions under. It started in 2008 as an education program for local youth. And really, this is what we do, this triangle. So at the bottom is education, and that includes mangrove replanting and rescue, so that we can reach out to people who want to do blue carbon restoration, blah, blah. It's a good source of income for the fishermen, because that is our our most important goal, to help the community cope with change and earn incomes. So we set up, I use citizen science as a tool to empower the community. I work with international schools, universities, whatever. And so we did set up a citizen science center in an international school in Forest City, which is a bit infamous. I don't know if you know about it. It is a China development in our village, which is massive. So we set up, there's an international school there, but even they have had turmoil. So we set up the international school, the citizen science program in the international school. We had 2 years of running it, 3 years of good research. Now I have to write out all the stuff they did. And then the school got taken over by the Chinese education arm of this development for financial reasons. And so my focus personally is community empowerment. The community focus is to be able to earn incomes and survive in that space, but my personal goal out of all of this is to see the community get empowered in as many ways as possible and to gather that information for policy. So our largest goal is to have a community-led conservation area in this space, and we are actively working with the government agencies to make this happen, and I will explain that as we go along. So this is the children's sort of side of things when we started. There were about 40-something youth involved. They would come in and out. We had an older cohort, which was really all about soccer and training them to take care of the younger ones. These are village kids. This is us taking them to an island on the East Coast for a field trip. And I would teach them science. They didn't, the principles of science, because they already had the local knowledge of the seagrass and the mangroves. I was just teaching them how to put it into a scientific framework and use a combination of both to share with others. So they would go around, they do research, because again, they were citizen scientists, and they would share their stories with other people, you know, all over Malaysia. They came to Singapore for international conferences, they presented at conferences, etc. So this went on from 2008 to about 2014, and then the kids all grew up, finished school, and some of them started to work for us full-time. They got full salaries. But then, up to the point of COVID, things started to go haywire with these young people. COVID was very stressful for all of us. We got hit very badly. The kids started to, at the ages of 21 to 24, they were either getting married, getting into drugs, doing all kinds of other things, wanting to work in Singapore because the dollar is 3 times higher. And so by the end, literally last year, or the year before, we decided we're going to terminate whoever was left. Some of them got kicked out because of the drug issues, etc. And now we focus entirely on the fishermen. The education and the research still occurs in the background, but that's largely through me and interns that I get from universities in the area, or with the fishermen. So now I focus on highlighting fishermen's knowledge, whereas these youth, when they were with us, they were the local guides, sharing stories with guests. They would go for meetings, they would present their stories to stakeholders, to the government, but it became financially insensible for me to be using my salary and whatever grants were available to pay them when they were not working as they should be. Because of kids, so they wanted to move on to other stages in life. At this point, some of them have children, they're married, they're working in Singapore, they're doing well, but this was not their goal. So Gabrielle was talking about a paper that we were working on, and this was just released yesterday. Just now, some of you were talking about how you grapple with the issue of research and activism. I've always been afraid of the word activist because in Malaysia and Singapore, if you're an activist, you get a job and you're in trouble, right? So you don't want to be an activist. So it's a very, very thin line that I walk, a dangerous line. So I've never liked that word. But then I realized as I was doing this paper that I am actually an activist. And the scholar activist thing is actually me, although I have never been a real scholar because I've always done NGO work. I've been working for communities for more than 40 years. I'm a bit older than I look. So perhaps I'm an activist scholar. I don't know. I just thought of that as I was sitting here. But really, I'm not good with theory, like scholarly theory. So I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm writing all this thing down because I need to go and read it and study it. And I teach, yes, I'm a lecturer at NUS. But I look for theory that fits my experiences. I don't do it the other way around. So when we talk about scholar activists, there are two ways of looking at it, right? Doing the research to help your activism, I do that. But creating something to study something, like doing a project on the ground because it's a research project and you got a grant, I don't do that. So I do the work on the ground and then I look for a grant that might maybe help me to publish it. But the reason why I publish it is because I want people to hear their story, not because I have KPI. So doing this work for 20 years drives you crazy because if you are immersed in a village, as you said, it is a constant battle with everybody, right? It is not hunky-dory like people were paid, oh, I went to, a village and I did this and I gave out food and we're all wonderful. It's never that easy. So the reality is different. So yeah, so that's I'm just trying to share all the stuff that was brought up in the discussion earlier so that you get the context. So this was a phase. And then when they were working for us full-time, they were also then teaching other youth that were coming in. So I could go back to my work a little bit, and they were supposed to have been empowered to do the teaching. They were actually the youth under the general overarching goal of what our boss Lan decided he wanted for the community. These youth then decided, oh, we want to do this, we want to have this kind of tourism, we want to teach these kids this. And then they would go into, people would come and they would do it. But after a while, drugs, females, boys, whatever, got more interesting and then it started to slide. So then we moved on. So focusing on the fishermen only is where I'm going to go from here. So that was like phase 1 and 2. So 2008 we started, 2016 we actually started the Fishermen's Initiative. This was something that the boss took on entirely by himself with my support in the background, trying to get money for it, writing papers, whatever, looking for funds. And his goal was to increase fishermen's income. He's from a fishing family. He saw that there were middlemen that were coming in to take most of their income, so he decided to become a middleman. So now at our market, the 95% of the price that the customer pays goes to the fishermen, and the 5% either pays for ice, plastic, or to the fishermen who work for us when they cannot get cash when they go out to sea. So then it's like 100% to the community because even the plastic and the ice comes from the community. And then we have various other initiatives to help them earn income, as I'll show you later. In 2021, we registered directly with the Fisheries Department, and that we just like hit the roof in terms of engagement with local agencies, getting support. We'd always been engaging with the regional development authorities since 2015. They came, they saw what we did, they supported it, they helped open doors. But once we were registered with fisheries and they just went all out to support this group of fishermen, suddenly we had all these other agencies that came on board. Fisheries is a federal agency. So the other complicated thing about Malaysia, so I was teaching, I was researching rural politics because I had to earn money for 6 years. Not trained political scientist, but did it anyway. And so what I realized is that to maneuver around environmental issues, community issues, you need to be aware of federal politics and positions, state politics and positions, jurisdictions of all, because they overlap, there are loopholes, there are gaps. That's how they manage to, developers find the gaps. You need to be aware of the powers that cannot be mentioned, that control everything behind the scenes. You need to be aware of where the money is. And then you need to be aware of local hierarchies. So it is battling all of this. So when you talk about the community, there is the community that you work with, which is my 40-over fishermen, their wives, whoever else is involved in our programs. And then you have a wider community of people in that sub-district who, some of which want this to fail because they don't get any part in it. Those are usually people in power of some sort, lower level power, but any kind of power they can get to put extra money into their pockets. Corruption is a thing, as it is with everywhere else in our region. So the battles are manifold. And then of course, and I'll come to this at the end, there is the issue of me. I'm like this. I obviously, my toes are painted. I wear shorts. I am a city slut, they call me. So I am the problem in this whole thing. I'm female. I have an education. And this is one of the biggest problems that we face, right? But I'll come back to that later and explain how we worked around this. So this is our objectives for the fishing initiative: to increase the incomes, to develop other sources of incomes, to preserve the fishing heritage, because I expect in 10 years it'll be gone. We're not going to have any more sea left for them to fish in. The fishermen are telling their children, don't fish. And then to implement a sustainable fisheries program. This came out because over COVID I couldn't go to work, so I was the note taker at the jetty. These guys hate to write. So I was writing down everybody's catch. This is also my data. And at the same time teaching some other people to take over when I go back to work. And then I realized that, you know, I started out my life as a marine conservationist. I loved the sea. Oh, all my endangered species were coming up dead and I was upset every single day. So then I started this sustainable fisheries program. But by this time I'd already married into them. So the fishermen are like my uncles now, and I started nagging them to release the endangered species. So then it became an official program, and I'll show you pictures later. But that was how it became, because I would sit and cry when I see an eagle ray come up, and then I get scolded by my fishing uncles because I do that. So here is the equipment they use, because they're artisanal fishermen. They fish only in the Johor Strait, the tributaries. They did used to go into the Malacca Strait. Of course, they go into Singapore because it's so close. But we try and tell them not to go into Indonesia because it's so much more dangerous. But also with the weather now and climate change, things have become a lot more dangerous in terms of extreme weather and how quickly it changes. So I'm just showing you pictures from the community so you can see what it looks like, our fishing platform, the kind of fish they catch. And all of this, of course, is based on our seagrass. I'm a seagrass scientist, so I have to show you pictures of seagrass. This is the fishing meadow, the seagrass meadow, the intertidal seagrass meadow. So intertidal meaning that it's visible at the lowest tides, but there is a huge subtidal meadow that is even more important, because when you have developments like Forest City, which is up there, this might suffer momentarily, but when you have subtidal seagrass all around it, it can recover, as long as the hydrology improves. So this is actually now a place where we take people for tourism. I take students for research. If you look at this, this is where a sand bridge was built at one point so that they could truck sand in from the deeper areas to this reclaimed thing, right? Yeah, so this is the infamous Forest City. Seagrass pictures, just to show you what it looks like, because some people have no idea what I'm talking about. Dugongs eat these things, and yes, we have dugongs. How do you know? These are feeding trails that dugongs leave behind. When they eat, they vacuum the seagrass. I'm sorry, I just slide seagrass pictures into everything I talk about. So there is a value to seagrass. If you look at it from an ecosystem services and well-being point of view, this is a huge underestimate that I calculated. This paper in 2020 with data up to 2018. Now if we calculate it, I have more data. It is far more than this. But of course, when we work out the cost of development, we never ever take this into consideration. And this is my amazing seagrass. Okay, where do they fish? This is where we are, here. This is where the seagrass is, intertidal seagrass. There is a lot more now, it's spreading, because Forest City appeared over here, it's not on this map. This is where the fishermen fish, traditionally. Sometimes they go out all the way out here, but Nan has been telling them not to because it's just increasingly dangerous. Now the storms are ridiculous. Our older fishermen have flipped, got injured, and now they don't go out anymore. So we are quite worried about them. So seagrass is very important. They support fishery species. There's all kinds of endangered species, amazing things like this pencil urchin, which we thought was extinct in all of Peninsular Malaysia. It's breeding where we are. And of course seahorses, dugongs, although that one was found dead. List of endangered species that have been released and reported by our fishermen. So even though the strait is very narrow, clearly there is pollution from the shipping, from the development, there's damage, industry, chemical, processing on, all along the strait, whether it's on the east or the west, we still have amazing marine life. For how long? I don't know. Some of this has come up dead because our fishermen have reported it, or it's been caught and released. But yeah, we still have it. That's just to show you how amazing this is. So this is a video of, what's this in English? Shovel-nosed ray. This is critically endangered on the IUCN list. So this is what our fishermen does. When they get it, they release it, but they also take video or photos. They will later tell me the weight and the length and the location. So I am supposed to process this data and give it to fisheries. Of course, I haven't done it yet. But here you can't hear, but the fisherman is going, yay, yay, he's excited, he's happy. So, the fishermen now see that, or they believe, that the fish are excited to be released and grateful. There's one fisherman who came and told me, oh, yesterday I released a baby dugong. And the mother was there, but the baby was caught, so I released it. And the mother came back to say thank you. And I was like, okay, I don't know if it's true, but yes, I believe it and I encourage it. And he was like, I got to do this again. So these things are how they sort of believe what I tell them to release these species, but they're also understanding that these are, pinnacle species and they need to release them for many other reasons. It's very hard for local communities to understand that a species is not available anywhere else in the world when they see it all the time. So you tell them concepts like endangered, extinct, they're like, no lah. But this is what it is. So to me, my fishermen are my experts. They tell me everything. I see a fish that I don't know, they know. I've had just now this fisherman that was releasing the shovel-nosed ray. I was standing on a boat with him, and he was like, Ina, if you look down there, I can see the currents going one way. He said, if you go down to the bottom, the current is going the other way. And I was like, no lah. He said, you jump in and see. So I jumped in and he was right. He can see right through the water. Also, he knows the space. I can't see. So there's so much knowledge that is not recognized, that is not acknowledged, that is stolen by scientists to discover new species, to map the space. Biologically, they get no recognition. So another layer of my battles is with academics who steal this knowledge. And I am not liked in some spaces because of this. I don't care. So threats to the fishermen, coastal development, reclamation, of course, climate change impacts, increased risk to life and limb, literally, because of the storms, which are crazy, ridiculous. In the past, they would tell me, the winds will change, they'll stay that way for 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Now it can change 3 times in 1 day. I have gone out to sea, crazy hot. In 1 hour, there's like this ridiculous storm that came out of nowhere. I'm wondering if the boat's gonna flip. And by the time we get back to the jetty, it's hot again. I'm like, what? It was not like this when I first moved to this space. But of course, there's also national economic and political issues. These people are in the bottom 40% of the economic strata. They're affected by inflation, diesel subsidy cuts, all kinds of political issues. It does trickle down. They hate politics and politicians. They realize now that it doesn't matter what people promise them, they get nothing. And then of course they're subject to village hierarchies, all of these association, village heads, jetty heads who actually don't do anything for them. And within the last month, it's been extra tumultuous because we constantly are fighting people, fishing association and sub-district head, who's trying to literally take the jetty away from us, like pull it out from under our feet. So we have been battling fishermen, the boss, and me in the background, because I am literally, they're putting me up as a witch to be burnt at the stake, because I am the problem. So they have been using me as the reason why they need to take over the jetty, because they say I, the outsider, want to take over everything. And clearly, as a city slut, I'm a bad influence on everybody and I must be prevented. And so the fishermen are like, well, where's the story coming from? So again, if you talk about community, our fishermen are 40 plus, you add their families, the women who will talk to me because they understand that I'm not there to steal their husbands or sons. There's maybe about 60 people who don't think that I'm a witch that needs to be burned at the stake, but all the rest of them might. And that actually gets in the way of the work that we're trying to do. But the fishermen are trying to preserve the space for themselves. The people who want to take over because they know there's going to be big projects coming in, opportunities to stifle, put money in their own pockets. I am a very convenient sort of effigy to burn. Even though they know that I just want to run away most of the time. They know this. They know I have a job. But it's very easy to incite people using me. And that can sometimes be a problem. Right? So we have all of this drama that goes on forever. So I shall shut up. And, is there sound? Can we get sound? We can try.
Saya bekerja menjadi nelayan ni, umur saya bermula pada usia 14 tahun. Jadi kita macam saya ni orang kampung, nak belajar ni jauh daripada bandar. Jadi pekerjaan ini yang saya boleh buat.
Okey, kalau total kat jetty dekat kawasan kita ni ada dalam 30 lebih orang lah. Paling muda rasa saya baru 25, 30 macam tu. Saya start daripada sekolah tadika memang ikut ayah daripada kecil lah.
Kita kerja duduk dalam pelepah tu tak ada kerja apa nak buat kan sebelum kita pergi kerja luar. Kita kena kerja kampung lah, ikut atuk lah.
Sebulan saya tak duduk sini, duduk darat aja, tak ke laut ni apa. Badan rasa macam, itulah macam kata macam tak ada kekuatan lah. Bila ke laut tu, itu yang saya pelik tu. Agaknya kita dah puluh tahun naknya. Itulah jadi gitu.
Buat je lah sampai kita tak boleh nak buat. InsyaAllah kalau apa kata orang sihat. Kalau dah tak sihat tu memanglah tak buat kan.
Sini sungai ni kalau kita tengok sekarang ni lah cukup jauh kering dia. Saya kecil. Zaman saya dulu kecil-kecil, kalau air kering betul sampai pada bakau air ni. Air tak kering. Kilang tak ada, apa tak ada, semua tak ada. Zaman saya umur 80-an, 90-an, memang ikan pendapatan memang muai. Banyak.
Macam-macam ikan ungar, ikan sembilan, ikan pari, ikan gelama semua.
Dia ada musim lala, nanti diorang ikut darat pergi cari yang benda lala tu.
Beting lah.
Beting tu. Pada dulu sebelum penambakan dia memang boleh jalan kaki. Kira senang cerita macam pesta lah. Sekarang dah tak boleh. Lumpur.
Dulu boleh dapat 10 kilo ke atas. Dulu ikan cukup banyak tu. Semilang, kiakap, apa-apa ikan. Sekarang langsung tak ada. Saya agak kena pencemaran lah. Sebab pencemaran pertama macam bot, kapal banyak, jembatan dah buat, tambah tanah. Jadi rumput-rumpai ni banyak hilang, banyak mati. Dan kemudian kerana air, perjalanan air. Kalau biasa tu air terus, masuk, keluar masuk. Sekarang berpusing-pusing, bergelok-gelak lah. Rumput tu tempat pembiakan. Pembiakan bertelur. Kalau contoh macam ketam lah. Kalau itu dah tak ada, mana dia nak duduk? Itu jadi masalah tu sekarang.
Kalau senang cerita, kalau peringkat umur kecil tu, kita hanya tak panggil rumput laut. Kita hanya panggil stu je. Okey, masa peringkat umur kecil tu, kita tak tahu benda ni penting ke tak. Bila dah start macam Serina masuk, dia banyak mengajar saya. Dan saya pula ada terangkan kat nelayan juga tempat pembiakan ni semua.
Yalah, nelayan ni kadang-kadang orang yang Senang cerita orang yang kurang pelajaran lah. Mana tak ada pelajaran tinggi.
Banyak haiwan yang melumpang dalam bunga karang ni. Sebab tu kita kena jaga bunga karang ni. Jangan musnahkan dia. Pengetahuan saya lah, pelangkas ni dia punya jari ni dia main pasir tau. Dia tak tahu dia korek pasir untuk apa. Sains je yang tahu apa dia korek. Sebab tu dia ada kegunaan dia. Saya tak tahu bagi yang sains ke apa. Kalau kita lain panggil dia apa, peli anjing. Dia ni ada fungsi dia juga. Fungsi dia pertama dia ni keluarkan api. Ada yang kuning, ada yang seakan-akan warna biru. Jadi kalau malam ni dia mengembang. Dia macam paru-paru lah. Paru-paru. Badan dia kadang ada anak-anak ketam, kadang anak ikan. Lagi seekor nak, bila tekan aja dalam dia keluar. Dia akan ramai keluar seekor, 2 ekor. Sebab mana ada hidupan sembunyi dalam dalam ni. Maknanya dia ada fungsi juga dalam laut. Sains aja boleh buktikan. Bagi kita nelayan tak ada, kita tak tahu kan.
Kalau pada zaman dulu, hasil banyak lah. Sebelum pembangunan ada sekeliling lah. Jadi diorang sekarang, nelayan yang ada, saya hanya dapat beri dia semangat. Kita jangan duduk diam aja. Saya pun tak suka sangat pembangunan terlalu gempak. Kalau boleh kekal macam ni pun okey lah.
Untuk nelayan saya suka pembangunan. Cuma kita ni harap macam NGO, kerajaan lebih peka dengan masalah nelayan.
Memang payahlah pasal pembangunan kita tak boleh nak elak. Jadi paksa timalah. Bila anak-anak muda yang ada pelajaran, janganlah duduk kampung. Carilah kerja yang boleh menjamin masa depan. Kalau harap kerja laut ni tak payahlah.
So this was a production done for a gamelan performance in KL. The music director for the gamelan performance is actually a seagrass scientist, my friend. So they incorporated issues of fishermen, and the idea of the gamelan performance was to use performing art to teach people about seagrass, because she got a Pew Fellowship Award to do that. So she incorporated our fishermen into this, and then they also had an exhibition on the fishermen and invited the fishermen to go see themselves in KL, right? So for the fishermen, not all of them went, but Ali went. And some of the women from the village, and they were quite amazed that people were so interested in their heritage. So that and then I used, because it's very convenient, so I used the clip to show people whenever I give a talk, because it really should come from them. But also when I tell them then that I'm showing this clip to everybody, wherever I go, they're very proud. And that also gives them a little bit of empowerment that they are able to share their story. These guys can tell a lot of things have changed, they can show the difference, but they will never come to a situation like this and share that story. But I do bring people to them and then leave them alone. If they can speak Malay, they will share all the stories that they know. It's just that you make them stand in a place like this, they'll freeze, and they just can't leave their ecosystem, right? But it doesn't mean that they are less able to share or less able to understand. If you listen to Abang As, he keeps saying, oh, we don't know anything, we're just fishermen. Scientists will know. They feel that way and they repeat that constantly, oh, we don't have an education. Because people from the outside constantly come in and put them down. And they will say, oh, what do you know? You're rural people, you don't have an education. But their education in the sea is far more than anybody with a PhD in science can ever have. But this is the issue. So another battle that we fight when we are trying to empower a community or share their story or help them preserve what they have is they don't believe that they have anything worthy. They don't believe that they are worthy. So my biggest battle initially, now it's gone through the roof, but initially they never thought they had anything of value to share. So my job really was to tell them, look, this is your backyard, this is normal, but it's not normal for other people. And then they saw, like, I would be at the jetty, they'd find something that I never knew existed in our Johor Strait, right? I would go to Ambon, to Bali, to look for this thing, and we have it in our little muddy, ugly strait. And I'm going crazy on the jetty, because I'm like, wait a minute, we have this? And they'd be like, yeah, it's everywhere, we toss it out of our nets. And I'm like, what? And then they're like, what's wrong with this girl? But then they realized, really, if I haven't seen it, and I've dived everywhere, then, that stuff is amazing. It's taken 18 years to have them realize that what they see, what they know, what they can share is beyond anything that anybody with a PhD can ever know. nothing that we can read in books can tell us what they have in their heads that has come to them through generations. And so now I must document it. So this is a thing that we did a long time ago when the children were still part of the club. We documented through interviews and collecting information, going out with them to see when they let us, where they fish. And so you will see Forest City is this triangle, this is an old map. Before it completed development, now it's up to here. So we saw where the fishing locations have been disturbed by reclamation. In the next 20 years, this is the development that's going to come up. Whether it's an oil and gas storage thing under Benelek, whether it's the port that's expanding. The purple bit is the, what do you call that, the shipping lane, so they're not supposed to fish there, but that's actually where the best fish are. So they still go there anyway, and then the port police will come and chase them out. So, you know, when I show this to the fishermen sometimes, they're like, yeah, we're done for. When Forest City came out, I took some of them to Forest City Island. And we stood on the beach here, and they looked out at their sea. They brought their wives. And the wives were, you know, Forest City has these fiberglass statues of North Atlantic crabs, seals and sea lions, all not relevant to us, flamingos. So the wives were like, oh, it's so pretty, taking photos, completely clueless. And the men were all standing at the beach with their arms crossed. I showed them the map of the development before that. They stood on the beach and they're like, we have no more sea. The sea's gonna go. So I was standing behind them crying. The women don't get it in this community. There are communities in the Philippines and Indonesia that I read about. The women are so involved in the fishing. You know, there are taboos, but they go to sea. Lan's grandmother used to tell me, yeah, in her age, they also used to go out, the women. But now the women are so detached. They seem to have lost contact with nature, the sea. Also, the women, the men don't allow them to do things. So the fishermen are very, you know, they're close to me in the sense that they put up with me being around them. You know, they take me on the boats, they answer my questions, but they will never want their wives or daughters to be anything like me, right? Because, I mean, I'm just this niece that they can't get rid of now because I'm married into the community, but I would not be something that they want their children to be because I break all the gender expectations. But I think they put up with me because they realize that I really respect their knowledge. But the women, on the other hand, have no understanding that the future of their husbands is at stake and in serious jeopardy. I don't get on with the women unless they work at our food stall. It's very difficult, and I need to preserve my mental health, so I just don't engage with the women at all. So people are like, oh, why don't you do a gender, blah, 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 or why don't you work with the women? I mean, no, I can't, because I am the devil incarnate and I need to preserve my self-worth. So this is what we're trying to do, to get them, you know, community empowerment, access to opportunities, opening doors for them, social justice, all the usual blah, blah that we talk about. What I realized I haven't done, because I had a student doing similar work in Vietnam, I realized is, I say these things, and I pick it up from the fishermen. Like they'll say, okay, now we have other sources of income. What we do for them is decided by land, and the fishermen go do it, and they're like, Ina, we want to do this, go find money. Then I go find money, and then they go do it. And they're like, okay, now we can get income. So I say these things, but I have never actually asked them, what is empowerment to you? I have never actually asked them, do you feel empowered now? Because the sad thing is, they realize that they are at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Otherwise, we wouldn't always have to battle all these people with power and money who are constantly trying to take over our space. So I don't know if they feel any more empowered. They just feel like, okay, we possibly have another source of income. We are always acutely aware that we're going to lose our sea. We could still lose our jetty unless our application to the land office comes through, and that we are battling so many layers. Honestly, I don't think they feel empowered in any way. But when I write papers, I'm like, oh, community empowerment, blah, 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 because that's what the academics do. And I need my job. So I don't know. I doubt myself. So these guys are experts, and as I said, I bring people to see them. They've appeared in the media, Al Jazeera, Channel News Asia, SCMP. They've had documentaries made on them. Some of this helped them, because this one, Jaring and Jaringan, was aired on local free-to-air TV. So other people saw it and they felt important. So the context of Malaysia, because this whole thing is about participatory action, research, but thinking about it from a pol science point of view, because I did that for many years, this is not an approach that is used in Malaysia. When people are campaigning for positions of power, they say, as bait for voters, we're going to put out participatory governance, we're going to allow people to elect their, just council leaders. It's never done. So how we run is based on what is decided by the top. So I always say, I concede that I do this stuff, participatory, getting these people to decide what they want, but we can only do this to a certain level. If you have to go back to the theory, for Foucault, it's within the levels of structure that you have. It's resistance, but only up to where? At the end of the day, if you have more money, more power, no matter what we do from the bottom up, it's not going to work, because we do not make that final decision. So this participatory governance thing doesn't exist. There's little to no recognition of rural people's ability to do anything for themselves. They're constantly disparaged, and they believe it themselves, that they are not capable. Because this is how our government has always been functioning, right? You use the rural electorate to get you into power. You manipulate them, you practice patronage, you give them money, and they will do as you bid, because they don't believe they can do anything else. In 2017, our organization was cited as a model for community conserved area in our state sustainability policy. Yay! Immediately after this, our government fell, and we had 3 or 4 changes of government, so nobody remembers this, except I put it on the screen just to remind them, but this is essentially gone with the government that fell. So these are the issues, right? They come up with something and then we lose it. We are currently working with the fisheries department, so I've been flying up and down to KL to talk to fisheries. They're very keen on implementing the first other effective conservation measure in our space. They're actually trying to put through government by the end of this year an OECM framework and use us as their first example in Peninsular Malaysia. So it is success from an academic point of view, that this is grassroots information going into policy. Fisheries is so impressed by this group that they want to push it through. This is the product of long engagement with government agencies, whether it's the Regional Development Authority, a local council, who also just put through a new planning document, has been working with us on blue carbon. All levels of fisheries. Like, we have to work at all levels to make them believe in what we do. Not just to support us, they have to believe in what we do. And then other state and federal civil service agencies. Constant battles, we need to be aware of many layers, but really the issue is, if the community doesn't believe in itself, how do we push it forward? Sometimes I tell them, okay, I'm going to present. You all want to present instead for a change? And they're like, no, Ina, you go. Like, fine. And then I tell them what it's about, and they're like, oh, but if we have this, can we do it? What do we know? And I'm like, oh, I'm back to square one. And I know you guys are the ones that's giving me this information for it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So anyway, the Tabarao Strait or the Johor Strait is already recognized as an important marine area. EBSA is an international thing. It's a environmentally, biologically sensitive area. These are biological terms. All of the marine scientists that work on these things are my good friends, but they are marine scientists, and I keep trying to show them that there is more than just the marine science. We also need to look at the other elements. So they're like, go find the framework. So here you are. All the cultural, human elements, and I'm picking up more of the stuff that you all mentioned today to go back to discussions with fisheries and the council so that we can make this real. We need to think about beyond biodiversity again, because I work with scientists and they're all about species. They forget that humans are also a species that is part of this, and if you don't take care of them, you're not going to save all the rest of it. So I try and bring all of this into the discussion. We need to, as many of you mentioned, look at these things from more of a socio-ecological system, but be aware of all of the other things that we are facing, whether it's from a socio-political perspective or the biological threats, because we might lose it before we even get to this, at the way they're building. And then at the end of the day, money talks. So I can do this forever, and I don't know if it's going to work. So this is the OECM criteria, and amongst that really is community managed small-scale fisheries is the way forward. This was also the way forward highlighted by IPCC, I think, and community stewardship, and we saw that discussed in the Philippines. Philippines is always at my benchmark. We need to get there. Filipino people know how to do things right. I don't know if you can get there. And ground-up initiatives. This was actually a slide that I used when I spoke to fisheries to say why we can do it. But again, I say this, and then the fishermen give me the information for this, and then they're like, not confident. Like, oh. So they're like half and half. So I don't know if we actually get it, how I will convince them that they can, and they are the experts, because they laugh at me, but I don't know. I mean, the battle continues. So we have had collaboration at many levels, and you cannot do it yourself, as you said. And I'm very grateful that they are there and supporting us when some of these battles just go beyond anything. I just wanted to teach children about grass, and now I'm doing this. So, key elements for successful CCA, I don't think you guys need to do this, I think you all know this already, it has to be inclusive, the community needs to be at the center of all discussions. So reflecting, that's me at the jetty, being their scribe. I started with youth, and the paper that just got released yesterday, thanks to Gabriel's advice and guidance, talks about my, autoethnographic reflection over the last 20 years. And that's a really good way if you're battling the scholar, activist sort of boundaries to reflect and write on what we do. The local champion is really important. I'm just the facilitator on the fringes, right? But the guy in the middle who's going to deal with the politics, who's going to deal with the fishermen, especially because I'm female, and whose vision we are trying to implement. Over the last 2 weeks, literally, we've been battling, and the fishermen have finally stood up. Like they called all of these evil people to our jetty and had a meeting. And okay, I was on the sides filming. And even that, I realized that when I showed them that I was filming and everything was being recorded, suddenly the fishermen in the back were like, it's being recorded, you can't twist your words anymore. And I'm like, oh, this is empowering them. That they know their words are being recorded. The words of the people that they were arguing with is being recorded. And then when those people tried to say things in a way that I could see they were getting confused, I would go to the more vocal ones and said, this is what he said. And then they'd be like, huh? And then there was like, shouting again. It was quite fun. So essentially, and then at the end of that, the fishermen of 6 jetties decided they would not engage with this fishing association that was trying to take us over. They voted for the husband to be the boss of everything, which means I have more work. But then it's a little bit harder for these evil people to try and take over things. So that, I think for me, whether they acknowledge it or not is empowerment. So I can document that with a clear conscience. But again, I was used as the witch to be eliminated. Thankfully, the fishermen denied that. But that's just the 40 over people. And maybe 1 or 2 wives, because most of the wives still don't trust me. There's another 11,000, 15,000 people that think I'm the problem. But as long as they believe it, and they will work to save themselves, then I guess it doesn't matter. For me, this never began as an academic exercise. I'm not much of an academic, I always say, because I don't know the theory. I can't remember names, I just do. My research is done to help the fishermen and their cause, so I find out what's available and I share it with them so that they have stuff to fight with. And then I write to amplify their views. It is a relief to hear your stories because then I see there are other people like me. I never knew that. It's always like, Eureka, when I find a paper and I'm like, oh, other people are doing similar things elsewhere. So yeah, I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you, Gabrielle. And really, for me, this is therapy. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for suffering with me. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge, your reflection. It's very enlightening. So we shall begin now with Sohibuddin and Shela. They are coming from Bogor. They work for Sajogyo Institute or SAINS. And Sohib is also a lecturer or assistant professor at IPB, which is the Agrarian Studies Institute in Indonesia. It's one of the main institute on research on agrarian studies. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you to be involved in this regional collaboration to share works by different progressive scholars in exercising participatory research and enhancing alternative social development in Southeast Asia. We are very honored to be here to reflect participatory epistemology as a crucial pathway for the decolonization of knowledge and development. And in this occasion, we would like to bring into discussion the intellectual engagement of Professor Sajogyo, who struggled to exercise participatory method under three successive different political regimes in Indonesia since old order during Sukarno administration and then Soeharto era and Reformasi era. Our presentation will be divided into the first is discussing about how Sajogyo struggled to exercise participation in different regimes, and then we will highlight how these legacies were nurtured and exercised by Sajogyo Institute, which is a foundation established by Professor Sajogyo. So for the first session, the presentation will be delivered by my colleague Shela. This is work in progress. Actually, this is constituted only very rough draft. We already prepare rough paper, and it will outline how Professor Sajogyo tried to counter top-down development from the regime and try to propose alternative way to understand the people's situation and to do their input. So please, Shela.
Okay, thank you very much. The title for our presentation is Participation for the Decolonization of Knowledge and Development, Sajogyo's Struggle Across Various Government Regimes. In this paper, we revisit the intellectual journey of Professor Sajogyo, one of Indonesian foremost sociologists, and as how his practice of participation became, in effect, a practice of decolonizing both knowledge and development. The key message is simple yet profound. Sajogyo pioneered participatory approaches, not merely as a methodology but as a political and epistemic project. He lived and worked across three very different political regimes in the old order, the older and post-reformasi era. He found ways to put peasant at the center, not as object of research or policy, but as co-creators of knowledge and agents of social transformation. Why decolonization is important? Because post-colonial countries often inherit not only political and economic system but also ways of thinking. Knowledge can remain colonized long after political independence. Sajogyo recognized this early on. He argued that society itself, not bureaucrats, not foreign experts, must become the determining subject of development. His intellectual and activist life revolved around issues often silenced by those in power: rural poverty, land inequality, village autonomy, and agrarian reform. In this sense, he was never just an academic. He was a bridge between research and action, between intellectual debates and lived realities of people. To situate Sajogyo, we connect with him wider debates. The first is Alata's work about the captive mind in post-colonial societies. The Sousa Santos spoke of epistemicide, the killing of local knowledge, and Tuhiwai Smith argued that decolonizing methodologies involving communities from design to dissemination. And Paulo Freire introduced conscientization, raising critical awareness as a step towards liberation. And the last chamber reminds us to put the last verse. What is striking is that Sajogyo's work in Indonesia embodied many of these ideas before they became global development orthodoxy. Next, the methodology, our study used a qualitative and historical approach. We read Sajogyo's own writing, examined archive, and studied policy context. Then, through comparative analysis, we linked his praxis with global debates. And by doing this, we treat Sajogyo's career as a case study of decolonization in practice. Not just theory, but for life, historical evidence of how knowledge and power can be reorganized. In all other eras, let's start with 1960s and 1950s and 60s. Indonesia was newly independent nation. Sajogyo argued that social science must also be independent. Important theories from the West, he said, are only hypotheses until tested against Indonesian realities. And through the agroeconomic survey, he worked directly with peasants in Java. He treated them as experts of their own life. He highlighted those invisible to mainstream development: sharecroppers, landless laborers, and also women. Here, we see his first step towards decolonizing methodologies, knowledge rooted in local context, and a sociology that reveals rather than ignores the life of the poor. And in New Order era, beginning 1966, was far more hostile. Suharto regime pursued rapid growth through the Green Revolution. Sajogyo critiqued this as with modernization without development, while righteous rose, the poorest were excluded. He built a poverty line based on abstract rural, but on rice, the staple of rural life. This was radical because it translated poverty into a measure people could feel, and it exposed how deep deprivation really was. Because land reform was politically impossible in that era, he proposed creative compromises like cooperative for landless peasants and promoting home garden for food security. By the 1980s, he and colleagues developed kaji tindak partisipatif, participatory action research. Researcher and villager live and learn together. Outsider facilitate local living. This was quite resistance, like smuggling democratic practice into authoritarian structures. And in Reformasi era, the atmosphere is changing. With democracy came more room to maneuver. Sajogyo openly championed village autonomy, agrarian reform, and right-based approaches to poverty. In 2005, he co-founded the Sajogyo Institute, which institutionalized participatory and critical rural studies. It trained a new generation of scholar activists and created a home for participatory research. And his influence extends beyond Indonesia, feeding into regional conversation and on indigeneity, rural development, and decolonization of knowledge. This is looking across region. We can reconstruct Sajogyo participatory praxis is in 4 dimensions. The context is he responds to authoritarian top-down development, and the principle is he instead on praxis, action, and reflection on knowledge, democracy, and dialogue. The goal is to raise awareness, empower communities, and build organization and transform the structures. And the process is participatory action research, inclusive facilitation, inclusive dialogue, and building local captures, developing local leadership. For him, participation was never tokenistic. It was about changing power relation. Sajogyo work resonates with the enriches global theory like Santos. He resisted epistemicide, building an ecology of knowledge. Like Freire, he raised critical awareness and saw facilitator as co-learners. Like Chamber, he embodied humility and handed power back to villagers. Alongside, like Alatas, he represents Southeast Asia current of building autonomous social science. In short, he was both part and ahead of these global debates. And for conclusion, Sajogyo life shows that participation can itself be a practice of decolonization. He blended theory and action, humility, and boldness. He showed that research is not natural, it is political. And he proved that development is strongest when those who live it are the ones shaping it. Today, when we face climate crisis, rural precarity, and persistent inequality, Sajogyo legacies remind us to listen, to share power, and to root knowledge in the experience of the people. His praxis, forget across regime and decades, remains a guiding light for building knowledge, democracy, and more just development.
Yeah, thank you, Shela. This is a work in progress by young researchers in Sajogyo Institute, will try to learn works by Professor Sajogyo and understand his contribution and how he engaged in different political situations. And actually, Pak Sajogyo himself provide an intellectual biography, autobiography about his journey, his intellectual journey. And here we see in this metric developed by himself, still in Bahasa. But we can see here how Pak Sajogyo merged various areas of engagement from university and outside university, from village until national level, and also how he connect different type of engaged activism since from education in university, research, policy advocation, and also organizing different actors. And also we see here different strategies of intervention which center around diverse structural problems in rural areas like rural poverty, agrarian inequality, food and nutrition insecurity, and also rural backwardness. And if we see this metric, we can understand how Pak Sajogyo is not isolated scholar in the university, but he crossed the borders between universities, civil society activism, engagement with bureaucracy, also work with National Statistic Bureau to adjust their measurement of poverty indicators, etc. So this is a very interesting case where professor from university work with different actors across different sectors and also deal with various structural problems in rural areas under different political regimes. Next. I want to highlight one piece of Pak Sajogyo's participatory project called KTP MDT, Kaji Tidak Participatoris Masyarakat Desa Tertinggal, or participatory action research on rural backward societies. This is the project during the last period of New Order era, where Bappenas request Pak Sajogyo to lead a big project, national project, on participatory assessment of multi-dimension of rural poverty, and also design how alternative development to improve rural society can be done in the last period of Suharto era. So the scope of the project is very big actually. It includes database collection of socio-economic and ecological situation in 3 provinces, and also action research or kaji tindak (CITIN) in 40 typologies of village, because the national government tried to understand how the characteristic of rural backwardness in Indonesia, and they try to develop 40 typologies at that time, and it's done in 26 provinces. And also assessment of regional policy and policy advocacy in 27 provinces, cooperative inquiry in 22 provinces, and lastly participatory action research based on the research finding, but it's only focused into province in Central Sulawesi in Irian Jaya, conducted in 87 villages. In areas where Pak Sajogyo deployed a big team as facilitator to designing, planning with community how to deal with their problem. So if we look at this scope of project, Pak Sajogyo tried to combine some multiples multiple theoretical perspective, multiple observers or researchers, multiple sources of data, and also multiple methodologies. Although Sajogyo always allow us to understand our positionality as outsiders. So there is clear rule between people themselves and researchers as outsiders. Then there are 4 principles of participation according to Sajogyo. The first is the cycle of practice, reflection, and practice. And in Indonesia, it's translated into from practice to theory and to theoretical based practice. So it's like a cycle of practice, reflection, and practice. And then the democratization of knowledge and development, because the knowledge of people should be considered, should become the basis of any plan, any change. And also, any change should be problem posing to address their real situation, and also joint learning and action, or in Indonesia it's called belajar bersama, joint learning, and bertindak setara, or joint action. This is just some illustration about how Sajogyo Institute develop legacies from Sajogyo to exercise some projects. It is only last 5 years, yeah. So we have a program among women in coastal areas, seeing from coastal, hearing from the women. We use feminist participatory action research, and the problem addressed through this project is gender inequality and power relation. Also to address tenure inequality in coastal area. So this metric illustrates principle from Sajogyo about knowledge pluralism, dialogical learning, and also the goals to transform the situation in the field according to the community aspiration. Another program is village education, using Freudian critical pedagogy and Sajogyo kaji tindak participatory. This project carried out among people affected by the expansion of industrial complex in Johor. You are yeah, and also related to energy transition in PLT in Johor. Another project is facilitator training in response to energy transition, because usually we invite local cadres from different areas in Indonesia to come to our office in Bogor, West Java, to develop together, for instance, research design to understand their situation, and then from this process they try to develop collaborative research, develop research design, and then back to their village with Sajogyo researchers doing cooperative inquiry. So something like that. So basically, some facilitators, some local cadres from different areas in Indonesia invited to Bogor, and it's not only in this case. Yeah, we also work with AMAN, Indigenous Alliance in Indonesia, in another project on the role of youth in advancing traditional agriculture among different indigenous people in Kalimantan, in Nusa Tenggara, Flores Island, Sulawesi, and also in Java. Another project is organizing indigenous women to address socio-economic problem in Aru, RC village. Shela doing this research. She can explain more about this. Shela.
This research is to challenging gender inequality and power relation about women, and also general inequality in coastal area and specifically in small island, and challenging inequality access to resources. This is to following indigenous women experience, ideas, and perspective by mapping spatial use and allocation, including access and control of indigenous women to natural resources, like live space, and it is to developing indigenous women collective economic organization and strengthening and empowering indigenous women. This dialogical learning by participatory pedagogy methods and processes into indigenous women actively involved in the decision-making processes at all levels. Then it is in 2023 until 2025 in Aru Archipelago, Maluku.
Okay, this is some product of activities in different areas in Indonesia. In the left side, it's some publication about agrarian situation in coastal area and women fisheries here. It consists of two books, and it is also co-written by local women leaders here. And three books actually here. Modul peningkatan kapasitas perempuan adat is publication in Aru, and the left one is we formulate a module for village education, popular education. This is the result of training education among project of energy transition. The idea is to transition fossil energy to green energy, but actually it is at the cost of local population when it's carried out through like expansion of energy plantation, which encourage people access to land, for instance. So this is our sharing from Indonesia, and thank you very much for your attention.
So before having the break, we have we can have a discussion. Actually, we have time. Thank you so much for keeping the time. Anyway, is there any questions? I have several for all the speakers, but I don't want to monopolize the discussion. So, if there is any urgent question, you can go first.
Maybe?
Yeah, yeah.
Sitting actually interesting relations between us, because I was also I was teaching at university in the same faculty, so we work on it. I was teaching for almost 5 years the doctorate program, Rural Studies, Faculty of Human Ecology with him. But then I feel you when you said that they're really juggling between academic. I do not like the indicators of what we perceive as academic, so I resigned. So I was also part of the board of the SAINS, so anyhow. Thank you very much for all of your insightful, inspiring presentations. Later in the afternoon, we can discuss further about the juggling of you mentioned about the position between academics and non-academics, various engagements. Also, you saw it, an example of Sajogyo. We also discussed about the intellectual copyrights, how we position the knowledge holders, whether the merits and as experts, peasants and experts, and so what about the intellectual copyrights, how to facilitate this, the growing confidence of the knowledge holders from the inferiority complex as you mentioned, and to ensure that also their voices and knowledge experience also are appreciated. That I think this agenda that we need to pursue further. And also interesting to understand about what it really mean by meaningful participation, the final say. The final say is of certain decisions that impact on the public, it's still on the policy makers, and so on and so forth. So how to articulate our research findings so it can ensure that really bring about the impact to policy brief or as a political channels that we could pursue and so on and so forth. So I think that's also interesting to see. And from your presentations, I think I would like to understand further what was behind of Sajogyo mind, even though I was part of Sajogyo, the Science Institute. But you mentioned many times about the backward villages, rural backwardness, masyarakat yang tertinggal. What kind of indicators that did he use to mention about this so-called backward? Because from where I work in Papua, the indigenous communities experience also the inferiority complex because it keep being imposed as the backward societies and not being perceived as they produce actually the various type of relations, which is not only instrumental as I explained also. It's broad relational values, intrinsic values, but since the development paradigm only focus on instrumentals values, so in the end, all of this knowledge, experience, and their indicator, the emic-based perspective indicators of what is construct as quality of life being sidelines. So I'm curious what was behind of his thinking, defining, like you mentioned, Irian Jaya, which is Papua, as backward. It's also defined by other Indonesian anthropologists, Kuncana Dingrat, Professor Astrid Susanto. I think most of the Indonesian is called the indigenous communities as a backward, label masyarakat tertinggal. So, and we still apply until now this indicator measured by the government. So I wonder what was his thinking to label that behind of this label of masyarakat tertinggal. And in that sense, how do you perceive as the word of empowerment? So like empowerment, and again, refer to what I explained, why can't we start from identifying positive deviance and in truly like bringing about like truly equality in the sense of knowledge and experience are equally. So we need also to be mindful about the term of empowerment, backwardness. I think there's all of these critical discourses that have been used and applied by so many parties, including researchers and governments. Begitu. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Yulia. This is our senior in Institute of University. Yeah, of course, Pak Sajogyo used official term introduced by the government. But the point is how, while using the official term, he diverted into different trajectories. For instance, when he promotes the national program for nutrition improvement, which is based on top-down intervention, and Pak Sajogyo using the same term, but he promote to base the security of food and nutrition based on people potential, and also using homestead garden as the basis for organizing committee to secure their food and nutrition. So we have to understand this in the context of New Order authoritarian era. And also the term of rural backwardness is the official term by New Order regime, masyarakat IDT, in press desa tertinggal, or presidential instruction to improve the backward village. Yeah. So this is actually the official term, official program from the government. But when Pak Sajogyo lead the project, he argued that the village in Indonesia is very diverse. So we have to understand different situation in the village. And he come to many typologies of village in Indonesia based on empirical research, the base data, survey, social economic survey, the base data, help him to convince the government the diversity of village situation in Indonesia. So it cannot be only labeled as backward. So he come with 40 or something typologies in Indonesia, and this is based on the empirical identification based on base data. Our argument in our paper is that he struggled to introduce participatory and people knowledge through official term, but actually it's imply different trajectory. So that is meant. You have something?
Could I react also to on this point? But I don't know much about the work of Sajogyo. Yulia Sugandi knows much more than I. Apalagi Pak Sohibuddin and Shela. But I think that if we want to talk about thinker and practitioner at Sajogyo, it's always difficult to judge or to have opinion on what he thought or what he did at this time without thinking about the context from this time. So we could not think, for instance, we should not expect that he has the same lens than us on gender issues, inclusiveness, social justice, and so on, because at this time maybe many of the knowledge that we have now was not available. So if we look at his work in his context, we can see that on social inclusion, for instance, he was very progressive. He had a great instinct, maybe also on how to better approach local knowledge, but maybe at this time he didn't have the theoretical tools to frame this knowledge, to categorize, to label this knowledge, as we can do now with all the scientific advances in social science that we have now. So yeah, it's just my point on the Sajogyo's legacies that for me seems to be very much progressive if you consider it at this time and in this political context. Speaking about political context, was Sajogyo claiming for any political identity, communism at the time of Sukarno or any other leftist movement?
Yeah. During his student, during he was student at Indonesian University at that time, he participated in leftist student organization, but not under Communist Party. But still, when he became rector during transition period from old order to new order, he only 1 year become the rector from 65 to 66, and then the government toppled him down from his position because so in our university there were 11 people associated with communists, including Pak Sajogyo, and of 11 people, only 2 being rehabilitated, including Pak Sajogyo and Pak Shamsu. So this is his background. He also participated in the student who participate in struggle during colonial era when Dutch tried to back to Indonesia after the Second World War. So this maybe also explain. And Pasir very careful during the new order because this background. And even he changed his name from Kamtok Tomo to Sajogyo. So this is like a turning point in his life after very difficult situation during the transition period. And this is maybe explain how she was very careful in using his term. We just learned that Pak Sajogyo already read Paulo Freire Chambers since beginning, but only after post-reformation he explicitly cite Paulo Freire. So how careful he was. So it's explained.
Did he publish in English? And do you publish in English at SAINS? Your institute?
Some of his publication in English, but he didn't write in a high-profile journal. So maybe that's why he not famous among international scholars. He wrote massively for FAO, for UNICEF, but most of his writing in and his writing style is very technical actually. It's very different with his early writing. He educated as agronomist, but then when he studied for PhD undergraduate, he became anthropologist, and his writing is more friendly to reader. But when under Suharto era, he wrote very technical, using many statistical data survey, but the spirit is always the same. So it's also interesting.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions on the presentation of our colleagues from SAINS or from Serina also? Yes, please.
Thank you, Serina. That was a fascinating story, and I could really feel all the complexity of the situation that you're in. And it's also interesting that you're working in the field of science. What I'm interested in is the contentious relationship you have with the women in the community. And I wonder how that started and how do the men view or explain that difficult relationship. And do you see the possibility of bringing in perhaps other organizations of women who can work with them so that you can ease the tension and between you and them, but they can still be mobilized. So that's for Serina. And for Sohib and Shela. So decolonial, and this is really a radical idea. In the Philippines, researchers who go to remote areas and immerse in communities get tagged as communists. And it's especially researchers from the University of the Philippines. So immediately we get red tagged. And even our chancellor got red tagged at the time because he was seen as a radical, progressive. And in your, especially because you are using the ideas of Sajogyo and really pushing decolonial thinking, I wonder if you have something similar when you conduct, when you work with communities in certain situations. So I think that's it.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, this is the interesting bit. When I first moved into the village, I was young, I had my own car, I stayed in a space by myself, and this was all wrong clearly, because I was female. And so in this village, because at the time they weren't engaging with the outside world so much, like we're 22 kilometers from the nearest town. This was before the development just exploded in our faces. And for the kids, or for them to go out of the village to the closest town was like a big excursion. So they didn't really engage. The other things to take note of in this village is that they're a Buddhist village. And Buddhist Muslims in Malaysia, in this part of Malaysia, are very conservative. The men keep the women at home. The women only mix with each other, and they have these window meetings, we call it Juara Tingkap. So they will go on their motorbikes, they always have a child or a sister with them. I never realized this until in the last 5 years. They never go anywhere alone. I'm always alone. Like I have a husband, but he goes and does his stuff, I go myself. They will go window to window of everybody's house and spread word this way. Right? So that's how they engage with people, because they're not allowed to, most of them, for the fishing families, they're not allowed to work. So if they want to earn an income, they'll cook and they'll sell food in front of their house. So anybody who passes by will come and buy it. Like for my husband's family, the women don't go to the jetty. It's not done. So like to my mother-in-law, it's appalling that I'm at the jetty all the time. When we have, there's a family occasion, like there's a big wedding, you know, the women have specific roles, the men have specific roles. So my biggest problem was I never conformed, and I refused to conform because I can't do that. So we have the big weddings. I don't wear the traditional attire. I'm in jeans and a club t-shirt, and I'm serving people like the men do. Like I carry a big tray and I put food on the table. The women are all nicely dressed and too much cloth and makeup, and they wipe where the food is put if it's a buffet, or you know they sit around, they gossip, or they meet people. I can't do that. I just can't. So these were all indicators of how bad I was as a human being. Because I was alone, because I didn't wear the right things. And so the word got around with their village, their window meetings, that I was accused of everything. I was, city slut is the norm. I was there to steal everybody's husband, son, boyfriend. I was recruiting child prostitutes. I was training child terrorists. I was going to convert everybody to Christianity, and all this kind of stuff. And it was spread by the women because they didn't know me, but they needed something to talk about because they had nothing else, I think. And I was easy because I'm there, and I don't fight back. One, when I first went there, my Malay was not so good, so they could be talking about me to my face, and I didn't really get it. Like, I didn't understand. Now I do that. And it was just a completely different psyche. So, and because I never tried to conform, I see people who marry into the community, they run around trying to like please the mother-in-law, or they try and dress appropriately, or they at least put on a show of praying 5 times a day. I don't show anything. I put up Chinese New Year lanterns, I put up a Christmas tree. I don't try to be what I'm not. And they didn't like that. I only, like I said, I only realized recently that one of the main things, that's why whenever I go to eat by myself, somebody will come and say, wait, where's your husband, where's Lan? Why are you alone? I'm like, I'm hungry. And they're like, you know, someone will actually come and, are you okay? Why are you here alone? Like it's a bad thing. I mean, we're 10 minutes away from Legoland, but this mentality of a woman's place is a certain way. It was only 5 years ago that I realized that when these women go and buy groceries, their husbands go with them. I do everything myself, so they're like, this is wrong. When I first went, because I'm a city child, I had to go jogging, because like, I have to go jogging. So I used to run to the jetty and come back. It's about 2.5 kilometers there and back. I live in a fishing village. And they were horrified. Why is this city girl coming in and doing this? Then I realized that at about 11 o'clock, when the men I'd see, I'm at home trying to do my work, because at that time I was a PhD student, the women started cycling. Because before I would also cycle, so I'd cycle through the village. It's like a 22-kilometer track. I leave the house, before I get to the end of the village, they already know I'm coming. That's the village gossip. And then I realized, because I only noticed, because I would go out to the shop or something, and I'm like, no, the women are cycling. And then we found a gym set. So we have lots of youth in the village, they like the gym. So I bought one set, put it in front of where I was staying. So the village boys, if they wanted, they had a soccer team for the older teens. If they wanted to use it, they could come and just use it for free, I just don't break it, right? Then the women didn't know that I was at home, because usually at 11 I go out and buy things. So I'm at home trying to do my PhD work. And I can hear them outside. They're using the gym. And they're like, kiki, nobody's around, let's do it now. I'm like, aha! So actually, later on, I have a friend who's sort of half in, half out of village also. She's an English teacher. And she said, you know, the problem is, I embodied everything they wanted to be, but couldn't. And so they took it out on me. They were not free to wander, they were not free to run, they were not, now there are more people running and exercising. I'm not saying it's because of me, but it's just the mindset has changed. They've engaged a lot more with the outside world. So they were angry with their situation perhaps. They were so controlled. And here I was, this city chick, coming in, free as a bird, and they couldn't do it, so they blame me now. The thing is, in this village, we have all kinds of vice. The girls are doing horrible things. You know, I have primary 6, how old is that, 11, 12-year-olds giving people nude photos of themselves for phone top-up. We have prostitute girls who will sell their bodies for phone top-up. The woman, the reason why I was accused of recruiting prostitutes because there was one woman who had a daughter in the club and who put herself as club committee, because we had a local committee of like parents and advisors. She and her daughter were actually prostituting themselves to the army boys. And sometimes they would tell the children from this organization, oh, don't disturb Kaina because she has to do her schoolwork. Come to our house, I'll cook for you. The kids were covered, they were in the rooms serving men. I got blamed for it. It is very convenient when they're trying to hide what they do behind closed doors to turn the focus on someone from the outside. That's what happened. Over time, they got bored with me because they couldn't get rid of me, they couldn't take me out, they realized I was still continue where I am. Then they would focus on other people and there were various other things that were happening, so then the gossip went elsewhere. My reaction to people doing things to me is turn around and either ignore it or I run away. So I went through phases where I would get in my car and drive back to KL and cry for a week. I was doing my PhD, so my supervisor was like, no, my dear, you have to go back. Now I'm back. So it was very painful. But, you know, then I became numb. And then eventually, I think 6 years into this thing, I got married to this guy. And he's just ignore them, don't engage. The men never tried to explain anything. The interesting, and they would, actually if you talk to the men are like, this woman just ignore them. That's how they function anyway. They disparage their own women. So if somebody's like, oh, this woman said this, not related to me, their attitude is really, this woman talk nonsense anyway, just ignore them. So sometimes the women at the little restaurant that we have also know that people are saying things about me, and they will tell me, just ignore them. You don't know, just ignore them. So I ignore them. I have another point, but I forgot already. So that's my reaction. Oh, the thing was, we had girls in our organization, and they were working for us full time. We're getting full salaries, right? People didn't know this. They somehow thought that club was all about fun and they were not getting paid, but I was paying them full salaries, well above minimum wage, with EPF. What's EPF? The forced government savings where you get money after you retire. So like they were getting all of that, they were getting insurance, everything. People don't know, so they gossip about what they don't know. And usually the girls who work for us, because they have to go into to sea, they have to work under the sun, they have to engage with people of mixed gender, the mothers would be the ones on their backs. I have had mothers screaming at me at weddings, at gas stations to say, no, my child should not be in club. She should be at home taking care of her parents, herself, and her brothers. Her place is in the kitchen. But the girl stayed because she went to her father to say, can I keep working for club? I really like it. And the father made it, yeah, go. The father has seen me at the jetty. He knows I'm not there to teach them to be prostitutes. They see, the fishermen see what I've done at the jetty. We're a bit like, if this girl's like a man, she can carry tanks and engine. So, usually they turn to the father to get them permission. But after a while, once they have a boyfriend, fiance, then really they just cannot be there anymore because the husband decided. This is how they are raised. But in the end also, they don't. I mean, you can't expect them to fight it because they've always been trained that their dream is to get married and have children. It's not to fight for seagrass. It's not to be like me, so that's maybe not their dream. And they want to get married, have children, and do these things. So I don't try to make it better because I just don't need more toxicity. There are people who want to work with the women. I'm like, yes, please come. So I'm not working with them. I send other people to. But the thing about these women is, again, they're not allowed to go and do things. So if you have a workshop, they don't do workshops unless it's organized by the mosque. So the mosque maybe will have some cake making workshop and they will go, or religious class and they will go. But you know, I tried to arrange for, my friend does insurance, so she has this whole organization that does like Islamic welfare and women's rights and all that. Nobody was interested. I don't know if there are many in that level, but you know. Opportunities to learn skills. Somebody was like, oh come, let's teach them how to craft bags from our old life jackets, create things. Why not interested? It's a very strange community. When I went to Kedah to do fieldwork, FGDs for political research, I tried just on the side asking them the same kinds of questions that I asked the women in our village. For example, if I pay for your daughter to go to school, would you allow it? No, no, no. Her place is to raise children. I asked women in this village, send your children, I'm teaching English. I'll teach the girls. No, they don't need to learn English. But the same woman will come to me and ask me to teach her science. And of course I said no, because I thought that was just offensive from the mother herself. But when I asked the same questions in Kedah, they were like, yes, of course, my girls must get educated. They must go out to work. They shouldn't be here. It's very different. It's super weird. But that's their culture, right? It's not for me to, I say they're weird. That was automatic. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. But, you know, on paper I will say it is their culture. That's how they're raised. That's what they believe in. And I am nobody to tell them otherwise. Because to them, the way I lead my life, like this, is bad. Because I refuse to have children and I don't pray 5 times a day. I'm bad. So it's their right to see me as they wish. I just don't try it. That's it.
Thank you. Before having the break, let's give the voice also to Sohibuddin and Shela. Maybe it will be also a question addressed to Julia. The question of what is the political stance for researchers in the participatory approach in Indonesia in comparison to the Philippines. Are you red tagged or something like this? Julia is working on Papua, and now the political situation also is very hard there, so how does it go for you?
Okay. Yeah, of course, our generation of my Shela is very different with what Sajogyo experienced during New Order, authoritarian era. At the time, Sajogyo will use every political opportunity and will exploit it to advance his progressive agenda. For instance, in late 80s, when People's National Assembly issued a decree about its path of equity, this is like wow moment for Pak Sajogyo, and he exploited this political opportunity to argue that every path is nothing without giving access to local people, to rural population, to their ecological and agrarian base of livelihoods. So he introduced like path of equity plus, not only 8 jalur pemerataan, it's with equity but with plus. Every path have to address structural inequality among rural population, and this is very different with us, because I start my career at university after Reformasi era, and this is like big moment of democratization in Indonesia, and even during this period to advance agrarian reform agenda is very difficult. So senior intellectual like Pak Sajogyo, Pak Condro, also Pak Wiranti with others organized behind the stage to advance National Assembly decree on agrarian reform, but to make it not to progressive, it's combined with natural resource management. So the degree title agrarian reform and natural resource management. But starting from this degree, issues, agendas like agrarian reform become mainstream in national policy, and even I remember in 2004, the head of 2005, the head of National Land Agency also talked. He is actually a student of Professor Saki. But the interesting one is that as the state official, he stated explicitly that our path of development still constitutes colonial modes of development. So this is very, very, very provoking statement from official government, of the official, because he explicitly acknowledged that agrarian development, agrarian policies still constitute colonial modes of development. So during Yudhoyono administration, agrarian reform become mainstream till now, and even our last president, Jokowi, put very ambitious agenda for agrarian reform. But the thing is, it's channel the progressive agenda into more administrative and formal land administration, legalization, which in many cases it's in contradiction with local gender, like indigenous people situation in Papua. So our challenge in our current generation is not to advance jargon of progressive development, but to challenge the government's definition of progressive program, because like land reform during Pak Jokowi, it's like land titling, certification, and the idea of indigenous-based land reform is fading away, because still, for instance, the state recognition of adat land, it's only limited to adat forest. And I recent during last summer school in the Philippines that it is actually in contradiction with agroecological perception of the local community, because the local community didn't differentiate between forest and non-forest. So this is the situation. So the challenge is different. So one initiative that SAINS Institute trying to do right now is what we call reattaching people to land, because many official programs, including through land reform, is actually spirit land attachment between people and their land, including through state recognition of adat forests. It's actually the attaching people from their land. So this is as illustration of what is our challenge here. We want to add something, Shela. Please. What is your feel here as the youngest generation in SAINS Institute, actually?
The challenges in youngest era is different, because it is reformation and democratic era, but we didn't against the government in explicit, the same with New Order regime, but I feel it is not more different with New Order or in Reformation era. I think it is not more different with in Reformation era or in right now.
Before the break, you want to add something, Julia? It's a very big topic, so I guess that you could talk a lot about that, but maybe just a short comment.
Thank you for sharing your experience. Interesting, because my experience in Papua is different. So I have been considered as gender fluid, so to speak, in my context. So sometimes they perceive me as woman, sometimes they perceive me as man. So I had a book launch recently. I just got back from Papua. I had 2 book launches there in the highland of Papua and Jayapura. And I use all of the language term ending perspective, not ethic. And it's interesting to see that we invited also the knowledge holders to discuss about my books. And some of the participants were quite surprised, like, huh? She got that knowledge, but she's a woman, so she shared it with her. But that's, for me, it's an advantage, so to speak. But of course, I also need to confirm my knowledge holders. Which are the knowledge can be published, which are not. Because sometimes in the indigenous knowledge systems, you have this really, sacred knowledge that cannot be shared outside. So, but on the top of that, I did involve in some of the things that outside of the territories. But if you see anthropological books on Papua, like for instance, very much masculine, yeah. So then if you see the heart of the here, the anthropological book written in Malay, also with anthropologists, women anthropologists. So they have like different perspective on things. But anyhow, so that's on the identity, gender, and the process of epistemology. I think it's really interesting to be explored further. In terms of the epistemology process in the highly sensitive area like Papua, what I'm grateful, like for instance for my book launching, it was organized by colleagues in Papua. So there's like a coalition, Kampus untuk Demokrasi. So there are coalitions of University for Democracy, and now we turned into PD Institute, Papua Democratic Institute. So it's like a really newly established research institute, but comprising in transdisciplinarity. So there are some, so for instance, for our current agroecological study, comprising of Jen, Nipa, Steepers, or different type of universities in Papua, plus also we have farmers, part of the research team. So there are different type of groups representing as a researcher, because researchers not necessarily always have to be academics, right? So where we are making like really yummy cakes there. So, and that's what I think it's really good to see from at least the book, my book discussions. There's an emerging, like really emerging collective awareness about the importance of writing their own knowledge from the inside perspective. So not, Papua is written by outsiders like myself, but Papuan written by Papuans. So it's really inspiring that I exchange books and publications with Papuan writers who wrote about themselves. Like for instance, a new young doctors, Papuan doctors, wrote, and he's specializing in nutrition, wrote about sweet potatoes. And all of the times we know Chris Ballard, the from outside, even Indonesia wrote about the sweet potatoes in the highlight, but now it's written by Papuan themselves. And it's really exciting to see this kind of publications written and published by the indigenous people themselves. So I wonder if we, like really providing more space for this kind of really local publications written by local academics and also researchers to be exposed outside of the Papua and even internationally. So I think that's my take, and I think it would be great to if everybody here could support on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So thank you to all the speakers. Let's have a break for 10 minutes. So let's go with the last presentation for today from Ajahn Mali. It's always difficult to be the last one to talk and to wake up everyone. So thank you so much for your presentation. Ajahn Mali comes from Chiang Mai University in a center which is not RCSD. What's the name again?
Center for Ethnic Study and Development under Social Science faculty.
The floor is yours.
Shall I start now?
You can start, yes.
Okay. Good afternoon for everybody. My presentation, the title is the Co-production of Knowledge and Emergence of Subject. For this, the subject, I borrowed the term from the Foucault. And the subject is mean that the person who have a knowledge and power to change something or to determine themselves. And for this topic, I will start by the development problems. So in every country, we face to structural violence with the state development imposed to the local communities. And this imposition, it made it always neglected the local values and the meaning of environment as perceived by the local people. I think that it is the problem of the development. In Thailand, since 1994, when the Pakun Dam is constructed, Ajahn Chayan Vattanaputi and his college also used the methodology we call Thai Ban research. Until now, 2021, Thai government still have the same idea about the development, but in 2021, the Yom Sarawit water diversion project, it large, is a big project, and you can see that this is composed of 3 components. The first one is about, I will to next slide. Later I will have another map to show about the Yom Sarawit water diversion project, and I will analyze how it difference between Pakun Dam and Yom Sarawit water diversion project. At that time, Thailand not implemented yet about the EIA. EIA means that environmental impact assessment for the Thailand policy law and law for the mega project before it start. It should have a EIA. So for the Yom Sarawit water diversion project, it covers 3 provinces from Ta province to Chiang Mai province and Mae Hong Son and Chiang Mai province. And for this EIA, no people participation and also misrepresent about the communities along with this project. And at that time, we used the methodology Thai Ban. And for Yom Sarawit water diversion project, we implement the People EIA. People EIA, it means that environmental impact assessment is made by people affected from that project. And epistemology turn to counter to hegemonic knowledge. And we try to change street protest to movement by knowledge. And this is the project. You can see the star here. The star here is for this project, it composed of 3 components. The first one, Yuam Dam here. And this river is flow to Sarawin River. And Thai government want to divert water, not allow the water free flow to Sarawin River. And they want to divert water, go to the central part of Thailand, go to Bhumipol Dam. And this is the mouth of the tunnel. The first one they will construct the Yuam Dam, and after that construct the tunnel. The red line is the tunnel. The length is around 61 kilometers. And on this area, we see that the line is smooth, but all this area is the mountainous, and all these are the ethnic Karen people. And the end of the tunnel here is also, this is located in Chiang Mai, and this area is located in the mouth of the tunnel is on the Mae Hong Son province. So the tunnel, it will go to the Chiang Mai, and Chiang Mai go to Tak, and after that the water it go to the central plain of Thailand for agricultural product. But in fact, for the Bhumipol Dam, the first constructed in 1964, and the government want to this dam for generate electricity, but now it changed for the agriculture, and it also constructed over 60 years ago. And we study to communities the mouth of the tunnel and the end of the tunnel. And in the EIA, it's interesting that in EIA mentioned that only 29% affected from this mega project. So that is why the villagers, they think that it's not true. So the history of the Yuam Sarawin water diversion project is started by 1995, but at that time, the local people and also in Thailand at that time, environmental movement is very strong. So the government have to stop this project until 2016 is come again after the coup d'etat in Thailand. And the villagers, they know about this project. After this project is passed, approved, the National Environment Board approved the EIA in September 2021. And this project is not implemented yet because after the villagers, they know about this EIA, they disagree, they totally disagree to this EIA. And you know how many pages for the EIA? It allows 5,000 pages. 5,000 pages. The language in this EIA is like an engineering language, and also we think that it's a technocratic knowledge. No? And this knowledge is try to control the water. And for this EIA, it uses a reduction approach. And after we read this EIA, and we found that The EIA not mention about the human and environmental relationship, and also separate people from the community, as it said that only 29% affected from this project, and also local knowledge is meaningless. So I think that the voice in the development project is very important, particularly in the EIA. The voice and participation of the local people or the affected villagers. Also very important is the core of the EIA. But in this EIA, it's criticized that it ignores the local voices. So in 2000, and villagers, they did many activities to tell for the society that the EIA is unfair and unjust for those community and for them. So 2023, they filed a complaint to the National Human Rights Commission of Thailand. And we did this project we call current livelihood in the area of the Bhumipol resource inflow augmentation project. In fact, in the these officials name, but for the villagers and society, we call this project is a Yom Sarawin water diversion project. And this picture is drawn by the villagers who try to demonstrate that what about their livelihood and how they rely on the mountain, forest, and river. And we have the main question that to examine the current way of life, how they rely on the rivers and forests. What knowledge and experiences have the current gained from this relationship, and how have they adopted to development and settled permanently in the community of Mengao and Mengmut. In the Mengmut communities, they migrate from since 1964 after the Bhumipol Dam is constructed. This community had to migrate or move their community 2 times. So that is why this question, how do they adopt the development and settle permanently in the community of this community. And this information also has been neglected in the environmental impact assessment. All these research questions is not mentioned in the EIA, state EIA. So these are 2 communities we studied. And we apply co-production of knowledge. The first one is a get to know. Get to know, it means that I and villagers get to know each other, and also get to know the same problems. And we have to learn about the problems together. What is the villagers their concern? And after that, we have to build up the task and form a research team and data collection. And 2 years when we were doing this research, we have a regular meeting with the villagers, and after that report writing. And get to know, we got information from the villager that the first time when this project did EIA, the standard, the villagers told us the standard, because at that time the villagers, they don't know this person. So the villagers said that the stranger came to the community with questionnaires, and they came to the village only on the daytime. And on the daytime, no villagers, no the youth or middle-aged person live in the community. So they asked the questionnaire with the elders. And those elders, they cannot understand Thai language well. Because this community, they are also the current people. And the stranger told the villager that maybe they have to relocation and we will have a compensation. But after that, the villager learned that they will not provide the facts of the project and including the impact of this project. And the education department also sent a representative to work with the villagers and to explain the project only in the positive way, such as after this project implement, the villager, they don't go to the forest, they have a permanent money, salary, and also have electricity and a good road to the communities. You know, in Ongkoi district, it's on the mountain and no good road construction. In the rainy season like this, if we want to go to this community, we have to go with the 4-wheel drive. And also this man come to the community with give a gift and something to the communities. And after that, take a photograph. And after that, this picture, it goes to the EIA and said that all the villagers agree this project. Yeah. And EIA also have a public hearing in the Lan Lab. Lan Lab, it means that Lan, it means that local restaurant. Lab, it means local northern Thai food. And EIA, and at that time we call this state EIA as a EIA Lan Lab because the irrigation department sent the representative to other villagers and to other NGO at the Lan Lab. And all this picture also post in the EIA, state EIA. It should not be the public hearing or participation to hear how the villager think about this project. And the villagers, when we did this project, the villagers said that we are current people living along the border. Our food and income depend upon our care of the forest and the river. If these things are lost, what will happen to our children and grandchildren? This after the villagers, they know a lot about this project. After we talk with the villagers about this project, and after that the villagers concerned and talk about this sentence. And we talk with the villager that we should change from street protest to the movement by the knowledge. And we explain to the villagers that we are academic. We will use the research as a tool to find information and knowledge, to show why the villagers, not the emotion. Every time when the villagers told the government that they don't want this project, sometimes the government officials think that all this only emotion and not it unreasonable. So we will use the research to tell that what the villager they think about and what about their local knowledge and why they disagree with this project. And the villagers, they did not know about what is research. And we also go to many communities to explain about this project. And we have a small group discussion with the villagers. Even if we go beyond the two communities we study. And also have a data collection. We use an anthropological approach and we mix many methods together. Participatory action research, cultural mapping, participant observation. Sorry, miss spelling, participant observation. And we send our field researchers to spend time and stay with the communities. And my field researchers, they also are current ethnic groups. And we collect data, community history and development, how about their livelihood, local knowledge. And we also did a survey and asked them about this project. And this after we collect data and we did the cultural mapping, have many times to talk and to ask and discuss with the villagers. And villagers, they present many times to us, present again and again. And and we also go along with the villager to see how the Ngau Yuam river is look like, and it's very beautiful. And it's the villagers, they use it not only the villagers, but the buffalo also use this Ngau Yuam river, and also many aquatic animals, and the ecological system is diverse. And it's not mentioned in the state EIA. And why we do a cultural mapping? And I want to explain that cultural mapping is not only drawing or painting, but it explains the relationship between the human or the local people and nature. And we do a cultural mapping after we collect data. And I think that cultural mapping is a good method to demonstrate the local knowledge. And we have a regular meeting and report writing. And this is our report. The first author is my name, and the second author is my field researcher. The third and the fourth is the villagers, who is the village, who is head of each community research. And we publish in Thai and in English. And also we have a training, and we have a study trip, bring them to visit the current community in many parts of in Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai province. And learning and exchange is not only after we sure that they have enough knowledge, and we also bring many students and scholars, foreigner scholars to visit these communities. And the villagers and the local researchers, they present their data again and again. And there's also another group to visit these communities. And they visit the other community in Chiang Rai province to exchange, and they in the against were there against it. And they also, after they did the research with us, after that they think that they should set up the groups, and they have a meeting among them. How does doing research change a villagers to a subject? I have a video to show you.
เดิมทีชาวบ้านเองก็อยู่ของเขาไปเรื่อยๆอยู่ไม่ได้คิดอะไร แต่บางนั้นมีโครงการของกรมชลก็เข้ามาที่จะผ่านน้ำแม่เงาแม่ยวมเนี่ยไปเสริมเขื่อนภูมิพลแม่น้ำปิงเมื่อชาวบ้านได้รับรู้เรื่องข้อมูลเรื่องการทำวิจัย EIA ของกรมชลเนี่ยแล้วมาดูสภาพความเป็นจริงว่ามันไม่ใช่ความถูกต้องมันคือไม่มีถึงก็ไม่ถึง 50% และความเป็นธรรมจากระบบที่เกิดขึ้นอยู่แล้วเนี่ย มันจะได้รับส่วนไหน
ถ้าเราดูแหละเวลาที่เราสำรวจแล้วอ่ะก็คือมันหลีกเลี่ยงไม่ได้มันต้องมีอยู่แล้วผลกระทบ
AIA เนี่ยมันไม่ตรงกับเราไงเราคนพื้นที่อ่ะเรารู้อ่ะอะไรเป็นอะไรอ่ะไม่ใช่ว่านั่งอยู่ในห้องแอร์แล้วก็บอกว่าได้บอกว่าดีทั้งหมด
Baka kuka panami keno ni di punya pusin pa tata le sidu wa prakrasin pa tao sin pa le ko mi le keloma bi lo
เราก็ไม่รู้ว่างานวิจัยมันคืออะไรเพราะว่าเรียนก็ไม่เคยเรียนไม่เคยได้ยินเลยแหละงานวิจัย
ในความคิดนี้เนาะมันจะเป็นสิ่งที่แบบยากมากๆสำหรับอาจารย์ที่เขาทำกันแบบด็อกเตอร์พวกนี้
ขอที่นี่จะชั่วโมงถ้าจะมาสนี่ป่ะถึงแล้วให้ก็อัพโหลดเทคูกตาจะเขาจะอ๋อตัดค่านี่กูเวลาก็อากาเขาก็เตะสกุลเลยก็ซาเดิมเตะลุ่นหนังคาเขามีเวลาหนับโปรดักทอร์เขาจะเวลาอุลิปุกป้าเขามาเจียวว่าในเกณฑ์พวกเวลาพวกที่พวกเขาพูดเช่นพวกเรเชอร์เธอพวกมาร์โก้เดินในตำนานเลเวลาเซ่
กัดมอสที่มาทางงานร่วมกับเราบางครั้งเราก็อาจจะไม่เข้าใจในสิ่งที่เขาจะทำเขาก็บางครั้งอาจจะไม่เข้าใจว่าการอยู่กินของเราที่นี่พื้นที่ที่เราอย่างนี้เป็นยังไงเราก็ค่อยๆศึกษากันไปเห็นบ่อยสุดก็คือถุงตะวีนี่แหละมาบ่อยสุดมาถามเรื่องเกี่ยวกับการอยู่การกินยังไงแล้วก็ไปถามคนเฒ่าคนแก่ว่าเป็นยังไงมายังไงจะก็คุยกับคนเฒ่าคนแก่ง่ายหน่อยเพราะว่าเขาคุยภาษากะเหรี่ยงได้
แล้วเราต้องคุยกันเยอะขึ้นเราต้องไปชุมกันเยอะขึ้นแล้วก็คุยถึงปัญหาเหตุผลที่เราเจอบ่อยขึ้น
เราได้ไปด้วยกันไม่ว่าจะเป็นนั่งเรือไปดูพื้นที่ไปดูลำห้วยเดินป่าอย่างเงี้ยเราก็ไปร่วมกัน
ที่แค่เปิดว่าแผนที่นี่เล่นยันนี่เดี๋ยวเปิดว่าตัวบ่าวเดี๋ยวเปิดตึกอาสิญญาอาร์ทอดเจตึกอาสิญญาอาร์ทอดเจเดี๋ยวเว็บกวยตัวบ่าวเดี๋ยวประเทศที่นี่เดี๋ยวพอกินย้อนเลือกกวยเว็บเซอร์กันนี่เดี๋ยวกวยเว็บเดี๋ยวประเทศจันนี่
จริงๆชาวบ้านเขาก็มีข้อมูลในใจของเขาอยู่แล้วล่ะคือทุกคนก็เรียนรู้โดยอาศัยภูมิปัญญาของชาวบ้านแล้วก็อาศัยธรรมชาติที่เกิดขึ้นเป็นโรงเรียนฝ่ายที่มีความรู้ในเรื่องป่าก็รับผิดชอบเรื่องป่ามีความรู้ในเรื่องเกี่ยวกับระบบน้ำก็รับผิดชอบเรื่องน้ำเรื่องสัตว์น้ำเรื่องระบบนิเวศน้ำก็จะแบ่งลักษณะนี้บางคนอายุ70-80 ปีนะก็มาเล่าสู่กันฟังว่าระบบหลังมันเป็นอย่างนี้คนที่รุ่นใหม่ก็พยายามเก็บข้อมูลเป็นการเรียนรู้ร่วมกันไม่มีใครรู้หรือเหนือกว่ากันนะคือมาแลกเปลี่ยนเอาข้อเท็จจริงที่พิสูจน์แล้วหลายพันปีเนี่ยมาคุยกันในเรื่องระบบน้ำเรื่องระบบป่าเรื่องการดำรงชีวิต
มันก็มีปัญหาก็เครียดอยู่ตรงนั้นแล้วว่าให้ว่าลูกให้ป่วยอะไรอย่างนั้นอย่างนี้เราจะทำยังไงเราก็ค่อยๆแก้ไปเอาคนที่เขาเขียนเป็นเขาว่าเป็นแล้วก็ให้เขาทำไปพอเขาทำเสร็จเราก็มาช่วยเขาอันนี้ชื่ออย่างนั้นนะอันนี้อยู่อย่างนั้นอย่างนี้เราก็แบ่งกันไป
ตัวเวลาดูที่พวกเขาพูดแบบว่าเนี่ยนับเปิดดูว่าตัวแบบเราเดี๋ยวแล้วแกเลยถ้าเชื่อต่อไม่บาลีก็เดี๋ยวพอบาลีคือว่าแกแต่ก็แต่แค่เจ้าหน้าที่เนี่ยพอแก้ไขวันนี้คันเนี่ยทำมาในคันเนี่ยผมมาชุนยาก่อนเนี่ยจะตัวเลยอาจจะเละท่านเนี่ยพอบ้ารูเละเจอเนี่ยตัวผมบ้าอุทกหรือไม่ตัวอุทกนี่ทำมาแค่ตัวเดียว
รู้สึกพัฒนาเยอะอย่างเมื่อก่อนนี่เวลาใครมาดีไม่ดีไม่รู้คนที่มาไม่ดีก็กลัวกันอยู่กันเชื่อเขาพูดอะไรก็ครับแต่ว่าเดี๋ยวนี้ไม่ใช่เรารู้สึกพัฒนาเยอะขึ้นเวลาเขามาถามอะไรอันนี้ถูกหรือว่าผิดเขาก็จะตอบไปตรงๆเลยเวลามีปัญหามาอะไรก็จะรู้สึกเหมือนกับว่าจะต่อสู้ได้แล้วก็จะตอบโต้ได้ค่ะก็มีความรู้เยอะขึ้นเหมือนกับว่าความกลัวก็หายไป
แล้วก็มาเลยไปกันเนี่ยอามูอัดดาเลยอามาอุปการะลาซาบุเนี่ยเสียงไปอาร์ทอมคุเซนเนาะเขาอาร์เจนักเก็ตแบบไม่มาเลต้าอุปบลอไม่ให้ต้าอุปเนี่ยมาตอนนี้ก็ให้อาร์บลอเจอย่างนี้
ก็เลยรู้สึกว่ามันเข้าใจนักขึ้นไงก็เลยมันเบาใจลงเหมือนจะเบาใจเลย
การเรียนรู้คือระหว่างนักวิชาการเนาะนักวิชาการกับชาวบ้านเนี่ยทำให้ชาวบ้านมีความมั่นใจขึ้นว่าที่เขาเก็บไว้นานเนี่ยถึงเวลาแล้วที่จะมาเปิดบางคนไม่กล้าพูดก็ต้องกล้าขึ้นมาการพูดความจริงเนี่ยทุกคนพูดได้ทำให้มีกลุ่มก้อนทำให้มีเครือข่ายเพิ่มขึ้นทำให้สังคมรับรู้กว้างขึ้นที่ว่าอาจจะพัฒนาขึ้นไปอีกเยอะอยู่ที่ชาวบ้านจะเรียนรู้ร่วมคือเรียนรู้ร่วมกันเป็นผลดีกับชาวบ้าน
Bin bani kata cukup mun uplar di Arabi lokal buwe da kata sinya Arabi buwe kata khane au plagi na di de ye ke ne mete do kai ne tale si do si wa kan ni koplo ti klan de ponya po mi baca atau plat jaga rumah atau di so sa ta ba ta pu ko te ta lo ta de ma lo ponya la u do kwa ru kwa si ni ko ba jo ke ba na na ke khane
for people EIA, academic and people, they exchange, and we have a textbook base, and we call this experience far. We have an experience about the current local knowledge, but it's not in this context. It's not in the Ban Met Ngau and Ban Met Ngui. But for the people from Ban Met Ngau and Ban Met Ngui, they have it we call experience. So experience far and experience we exchange together, and we also add some information. I think that for the villagers, after they know about the whole project, this Yom Salawin water diversion project, and they can relate that this the community situation and the macro situation, and we have a data collection, and the important thing is the knowledge and action flow. After we have a knowledge, they have a knowledge, and we have to try to encourage them to present and to talk to the outsider and invite or bring the outsider, academic and student to visit and ask them a lot of questions. And I think that for these activities, the villagers, they can learn a lot. And after that, we think that for this project, we want to community movement. In fact, I interested in the community movement. So I did many projects go to the communities to study how the community resist or negotiate to the development. And for this kind of research, they co-producing knowledge with us. They are not only the data provider or key informant. Many research projects visit the villagers and ask villagers to answer or to point out how the researcher will collect data. But for this project, we work with them as a partner, co-designer. This cultural mapping, they tell us, and this did not occur in the EIA. And for the left-hand side, the communities, the cultural mapping show us how many times they had to resettlement after the Pumipon Dam is constructed. And for the right-hand side, they show us where is the pumping station and where is the mouth of the tunnel. And in the EIA, not mentioned about this. And EIA only like this, not anything about this. It's total difference. And also this Yuam River in EIA left-hand side, and this from the current point of view. And we collect many aquatic animals and also the cultural mapping. After the villager did the cultural mapping, and we visit many places along with the river to see what happened and what is the aquatic animal or fish or shrimps in that area. And what about the sub-ecosystem, Wang and Gap, how is it? And these fishing gears. In this community, there are not many kind of fishing gear compared with the community along with the Bangkok River. And with the forest product, they try to explain to us about the forest, different level of the mountain. There are different kind of trees. And if this project is implemented, the lower in the limit bank it will be flat. And this also after they draw this cultural mapping, we go with them and we use a GIS to point that it not only in the cultural mapping, it not only in the villagers' imaging, it real in the GIS with the GIS. And this I don't know, contact. Do you know this one? You don't know. I think that women, they eat a lot. Quite eat book, cognac. It for the women who want to diet. And also this kind of the cognac is not mentioned in EIA, but it's the main income for these communities. And this also I can believe the villager will collect it when it falling down and it dry, not here. And this we also have a survey, and we found that the Myanmar village can income 15,000 baht per family per month, but in EIA said that only 9,000 baht. That is why the EIA said that this community, one family have income only 9,000 baht. It isn't able for the EIA for this project should be implemented, and after that, after the project is implemented already, the income for this community will increase. And the same as Manmengut, I did not mention in this presentation. Manmengut, they grow a lot. They grow 100% for this community. They grow out seasonal longan, and they can get and this year the longan price is low. Some year the longan price is good. The income is around 15,000 baht. What happened? Yeah. And the same, the EIA said that only 9,000 baht per month. And this we think that the main is we have to make a trust, and we should change a pronoun between we, I and you become we. We, it means that we understand and the same problems, and we know that what about our goal for this project. We want to terminate the state EIA. And this one, we think that, as I said, that the other research project see the villager as an object or as a key informant, but for this project, we change them to be a subject or organic intellectual, and they producing knowledge and also use this knowledge to movement and to receive the existing power. And co-production of knowledge is not only collecting data, but it should be a process of empowerment local people. And knowledge should not only be published in journals, and it should also empowerment the community to insist their rights. This finish and this book. Okay, finish discussions.
Thank you so much. So last session for questions and answers, and because it's the last of the day, you can also ask questions to the other speakers from this morning. To begin the research on the two particular villages you talked about, and what is the frequency of your visits to the villages? The frequency. How many times did you go there?
Oh, many times. Cannot count.
You sleep there, you stay for a few days?
Sometimes I sleep there, but I send my few researchers. She is a Karen, and she can communicate with the villagers, and it's easy for the villager keep in touch with us. And also this committee in 1995, when they protest, they don't want the dam, they consult Ajahn. So after we know about the EIA in past, we visit this community and we talk with the villagers.
And did they come to the university also to talk?
Many times. Many times.
And that's another question, because I saw your presentations on different fieldwork for now several times, and it's always very interesting. And I always wonder, how do the public authorities see your research activities? Do you confront your participatory EIA with the government EIA? And what is the reaction of the authorities?
We also had a meeting with the irrigation department and also the consultant, we call Panya consultant, and the university who did this EIA. And the villagers and we have asked questions, but they could not answer. They could not answer our questions. And we submit we submit the book, and we produce a film. I think that you watched it already. And this film, and we submit to the administrative court. And now it's on the process.
So if we understand well, you have a lot of freedom to do your research and your publishing. There is no issue on this point, right?
Yes. And this book not hitting anything. It just try to show the local knowledge. And we read the EIA, what is not accurate, and we show our finding. And in EIA state EIA, it also mentioned about they use the anthropological approach. But if we are anthropologists, we know that if they use anthropological approach, the finding it should be a thick description. But it's very thin. It not mention even the livelihood, how the nature rely on the natural resources, not mentioned about this. And for the environment now, before that this community, they are the mining workers. And at that time, maybe 50 years ago, in that area, it was a mining area. And in the EIA, not mentioned about this. And that is why the villagers, they have more power, because after they study with us and they study this project, and they know a lot. The knowledge and the finding is opposite to the state EIA. As the current people, the elder, he said that it's opposite.
There is a question from Shela, then from Sohibuddin.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very fascinating presentation. Thank you very much. I have one question for you, and then for all the other speakers. Yes. So thank you very much again for your presentation. So one question for you first, and then for all the other speakers. I'm very interested in your cultural mapping, and I'd like to know whether you have integrated in your mapping sort of the spiritual or religious places. We know that it's always quite relevant, I would say, to the different Southeast Asian communities and societies at large. So, for instance, mapping graves, cemetery, temple, churches that can be impacted by the dam. This is my question. And then, well, I was very so interested in other papers because most of you are integrating new kind of mapping, and this is a kind of visual interaction. So myself, I'm working also on multi-map. So I'm not sure, but I'm not sure it's a multi-map we are talking here. It looks like you kind of impose a way to describe the landscape, but maybe I'm wrong, but or maybe do you ask people to draw by themselves the place and to design at the same, to control as far as they can actually the space of the drawing, the painting, and to adapt to their the drawing to their own imagination and conception of the space at the time. Actually, this is interesting. I think topic. Maybe you can move further later on the special issue on that because it's very interesting. And then my last question for everybody actually is, well, we know that spiritual leaders are quite important, relevant, at least in all the countries we have, whether in Philippines, the priests, the missionaries, etc., the pastors, and the same for the ustads, imam in the Muslim world. So I'm wondering, our Buddhists, of course, place. So I'm wondering how, but nobody talk about that actually, or them during the transition. So how do you integrate spiritual leaders in your participatory research? Or do you avoid them? Or how far can you be? Of course, it depends, I guess, on the kind of personality of the leaders. Or do you systematically avoid them? Why? Maybe, or maybe do you try to integrate them? Because we know there's a lot of faith-based NGOs working as well, and that can be another bias, Of course, you can consider this, but how do you work together or not? This is maybe just some beginning of a bigger reflection, of course. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. And I would like to return to the cultural mapping. And this picture. And I did not go through the detail, but for this community, this one is the Saksin, sacred forest, but I did not mention to you. And this when they, after the first time, the community, they settled down this area, and after the people land constructed it flat, and the communities moved the village to this area, and it over the cemetery. So after that, there is a bad event, bad thing occur in this community. So after that, the villager moved the community here. And for the Saksin or sacred forest, and first they are larger than this, and now it's smaller than the first one. And also there is this Saksin or sacred forest. They perform ceremony 2 times per year. So I did not mention, but in that book I mentioned. And for this community also have I cannot, and for this community they not mentioned, but there is a forest, community forest, but they use with the other community near this community. And this community, they don't have a lot of land. For in this community, they don't have the land for cultivate rice, and they have only garden, a small garden in this community. and some of them, and this also community forest is a community forest, and pumping station will cover over the community forest, and I think that is also community forest, is also community forest. And these communities, some of them they convert to the Christian, many of them they convert to Christian. So, and yeah, and for the second question, you asked me that I told them what I want them, and for those, we don't know anything about both communities. After we collect data about the history of this community, and after that we ask them to draw the mapping. We not compose them that, oh, you should do like this, no. They do by themselves. But only if they told us about the history and the location, and we have the data. But after we see the mapping and we think that, oh, why it not happen in this mapping, and we ask them why you don't put on the mapping. And for this community, why they put a lot of, this is the communities, this is the community they separate to location, to location. And when the EIA only state this area for the the mouth of the tunnel and water storage tank, only this area, and only for family or for person in this area. But the community told like this because they want to tell us that it not only for, because when this project is during the construction, many of the area is also affected from this project. So that is why they draw many cases.
I'll go first. I avoid all religious leaders as a rule, but also, again, complications of this village. It seems to be, and I've written about this, the understanding of religion in these communities. It is believed that the woman as a mother is pure, and she holds, although it's patriarchal society, the domestic sphere is very powerful in the sense that the mother, as a mother, always knows what's right and good. And her role is to encourage her children to be religious and to make them pray and go for religious classes and all that. So they get social status from their children constantly going to religious classes. You can hear them talking like, oh, my son does this, my son does that. There's some, because they're with the Islamic Party, they send their children to Egypt to study, they have scholarships and all this. And those are like the proudest mothers because their children are going to religious education. There are mothers who take their children out of normal government education and put them into religious schools, like full-time, sekolah pondok. I'm very proud of this because for the mothers to gain status, not just the number of children or grandchildren you have, but also how many of them are praying, are going to religious schools and therefore deemed religious and therefore taking care of the afterlife. So, by the same token, the men are assumed to do all the bad things. So the assumption is that men will drink, be interested in women, do all the bad things, and the mother gets more status by being able to tell her friends, and I heard it, oh, you know, I made my husband stay home and pray. Look, now he doesn't do this anymore. So she is a better woman because she's able to convert her husband into a more religious person. That is the social context to the place where I am. At the same time, the public sphere is the man decides blah, blah, blah. But in the public sphere, the man is also trying to prove that he's not afraid of his wife. So the fisherman will sit at the jetty during fasting and eat in the open Last time I saw, I was shocked. They will drink, they will do all kinds of things, but they will never admit to listening to what the wives tell them to do. But actually, when a decision has to be made, or a family or whatever, it is the woman who decides. When it comes to religious practices, it is the woman that has made the man do it. So you hear it amongst the men. Oh, I gotta go home. It's Friday, you know. Then somebody will be like, oh yeah, you're scared of your wife. You know? So it's that kind of thing the woman controls. So that's the setup. And so the message behind that is, one, the fishermen are not necessarily religious, so religion is not something that I would use to ask them about things. However, there's still a lot of belief in the spiritual world, which goes against the practice of religion as the women and the religious clergy would like to have it. So they still talk about this, that to go out to sea to catch fish, they must say certain magic phrases, that certain people do this. Some of the older people, women, they'll tell me about how, you know, the spirits that exist at sea. That they still respect. We have mapped an island which is very near us, very small island, that has spiritual meaning. So all of those stories are documented. But otherwise, the religious authority is somebody that fishermen also avoid, because they're hiding there when it's prayer time, unless their wives tell them to go back. Yeah, so that's the context where I am. I don't know how it is everywhere.
Thank you for your presentations. I think it's pretty much transdisciplinary research that you did. I like the fact that you recruited also local researchers, Ecology, that's also part of the research teams. Related to the mapping, then also mapping, but there are two different kinds of mapping. IPBS call it as values mapping. So the one mapping is based on territory, because territorial mapping which lay the foundations for formulating biocultural diversity. So, like in my presentations, I presented what does the land degradations impact on the community. So then we have territorial mapping, which area sacred or not sacred. But the second part is it doesn't rely on territorial. So it's more like narratives and based on really rooted for imaginations, because it doesn't attach to certain territory and attach to the narratives of each of the household. So with the context that I'm working, for instance, in certain household, they have this certain, how is it, like beyond the areas that are not, they should not be exploited. And this area is not shared with like really collective. So it's very, very exclusive to certain households. So to imagine this like really big canvas, so to speak, is full of these different types of narratives of each of the households. So very, very rich in the household, so like across any territorial that you can imagine. And this is also what I mentioned in my book about there's always conflict between territorial mapping done by the government. So the government like seeing like a cake, okay, put it this in the territorial, but people have these different constructions of imaginations what they perceive as local or context. So not necessarily, and most of the time not in line with this physical territorial mapping. So I think that's one of the reasons why IPBS invite us to move beyond the territorial mapping into this values mapping. It means that understands three different kind of ecological relations that was built by people with the landscape. The intrinsic values, the instrumental values, and the relational values. So based on this type of values mapping to formulate this value-centered policy which I explained earlier. Again, the second one is about spiritual leaders. Well, not automatically religious leaders. Spiritual leaders are different. There are in some cases spiritual leaders are religious leaders, but there are some cases not necessarily the same. In the context of Papua, it's related to how people define themselves, because identities are always multiple. There's no such thing as single identity. So, and the first identity that is defined by the people themselves is anak adat. Anak adat means that I am the customary child. I'm part of this, adat. So then the second identity would come like any denominations, either Protestants, Catholics, Muslim, and so on and so forth. And that's what happened during my book discussions. We also invited the religious leaders because my book is also discuss about how these different kind of cosmologies, the Catholic Church, the government, the modern market, they are all three different kind of cosmologies influence the constructions of collective identity of the indigenous community in the highland of Papua. So of course we invited also the representative of the Catholic Church. We also invited the representative of the Muslim community, which are in some indigenous community converted to Islam. We invited also different type of denominations, so to speak. But it's quite interestingly, disregarding any religious denominations, they call themselves as anak adat. So then, it's like, how is it, like suprastructure, so to speak, suprastructures beyond of any other structure. Of course, it's different when I did the research in Kalimantan, so to speak. For example, related to Madura. So the first identity they put is as a Muslim. Then it comes the others identity. So it depends on how people define themselves as the main identity they would like to be perceived by others. And I think that's really influenced a lot. In Papua, it's very open as an anak adat. So yeah.
Sorry, one thing that I noticed, and I only understood when I read, I think it was Cynthia Chow's book on West Papua. When I first ever showed the fishermen a map, they were like, what's this? They cannot actually visualize their sea. We don't have borders at sea. They know where it is because there's buoys, they know they're going to other countries' waters, but when you're at sea, you have a different perspective. We, as academics, we tend to look at things from a land-based perspective. So you look at a map, it is a land lens. When I show a map to a fisherman, they're like, what's this, where's this? Because their perspective is a sea-based perspective. If you're speaking to orang laut, sea people, they really cannot see this land-based map. They cannot walk into deep. When I ask a fisherman where it is, without looking at a map, they'll be like, oh, on this side is this. So they pinpoint their location by landmarks around them. More accurate than the GPS. But if you give them a flat map, and you ask them where is it on this map, they're like, what is this? Then I have to explain to them, oh, this is the port, this is that. Then they can visualize it in their head. Then they can tell me, oh, roughly it's about here. But if you stand here and you can see this and that, that's where it is. I'm like, okay. Then I have to match that with our research tool, which is a flat map. So that language of mapping, if you're at sea, is also doesn't connect. But if you read Cynthia Chow's book on West Papua, and she spends time with indigenous people, she then talks about how mapping in their world is also three-dimensional and includes the more than human. So I've also heard that from a fisherman, oh, that place where we always hear the Pontianak scream. Pontianak is the spirit. And so they include things like this, and that's how they find that location. So that's, I guess, a multi-spherical map that you can consider.
First of all, thank you, Mandy, for that very important discussion on cultural mapping as one of the different methods of expressing spatial knowledge. And for that matter, sharing that knowledge, because oftentimes people, of course, and communities, they have their mental maps of their place, and they're very well versed with respect to interacting within their environments. But then in instances when we need to consolidate in a particular form, present that information in a way that is also understandable to institutions, say the government, to kind of counter their narrative about what's there in the place and what's important in these particular spaces and how they should be used or utilized. So while if you think about it, it may not be that the practice may not be completely indigenous to the community with respect to drawing, yeah, but then we need to kind of also look at how the formats that we can use to represent these very important information, so that we can also engage others and make them understand notions about space and place for the indigenous peoples or for the communities that we're working with. For out there, for the examples that we showed earlier, at least for the disaster risk reduction and management planning, it's an urban community, so spatially the context is quite different, and these folks are very familiar with the kinds of spatial representations that we utilize using our phones, gadgets, and other accessible forms of maps. But for other communities, it will be different. So maybe in relation to that, I could also expand from our experience in Atel, because me, in my practice, I am engaging also with other communities. For instance, we also make use of 3D modeling, because at some point in my life as a mapper, I was also part of a network of non-government organizations assisting different communities in the Philippines with the tightening process. So indigenous peoples need to consolidate their cultural data, and one important part of that is proving that they have been in that area since time immemorial, requiring the geographically referenced kinds of maps that the state understands. So if you think about it, you're depicting indigenous knowledge, but then through the mechanisms of the state, because you're essentially following a law, a particular law, facilitating the tightening process for indigenous communities in the country. So it's an interesting engagement, because in a way, the question of how indigenous are truly mapping their spaces, we don't get to see that practice because we have to comply with how the government wants this set of spatial information to be organized, and that is usually still using geographically referenced data and also using tools like GIS to generate those maps. So in instances like that, we also recognize that we are also introducing to the community these other ways or methods of depicting their own spatial knowledge about place. And I think for the second question, which is also an important question, as you mentioned about the Philippines, where how do we engage with spiritual leaders, would be very contextual, because as you mentioned, Julia, in some contexts, the spiritual and the religious leaders are the same, but in many communities and contexts, they will be different. For AltDev, because it's also embedded in the social movement,
there are particular issues or social issues in which, for example, the Catholic Church, as a very influential institution, is engaging in advocacies. For example, when it comes to infrastructural development such as the building of dams, mining issues, the Catholic Church will be very active in that campaign. But in other equally important issues concerning many communities in the Philippines, for instance, housing, it may be in some degree localized if that actually exists. But so far in our work, there's no. With the Asamba, for example, in the housing, we need picture. So sometimes it's also because of how social movement organizations are connected within the network of religious organizations.
While they're transferring mics, I think just to give more nuance to that, usually the church becomes active when it already becomes a national or popular issue. So they just go with what's trendy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can relate, but it's like that. Like, for example, during Duterte's drug war, so they were essentially just, during the start, they were very silent. Then it became so rampant, it's become widely known internationally. Then in the Philippines, it's called PUSO, popular. Then you see them now, but definitely there's also that angle that civil society organizations are continuously banging the doors of the church, and then when they see, oh, it's the popular notion among the masses, maybe we can, this is just me being critical of the church, of the Catholic Church. Yeah, I'm an atheist, just to be reflexive about it. Yeah.
I'm gonna share what I've read in Asamba, because their victories, much of it, a big part of it is alliance work. So aside from human rights activist groups, the church religious groups really played a role in mobilizing in assemblies, and yeah, they were really vital in winning their struggles on housing. And also coming from my experience, because I grew up in an urban poor community, the Catholic Church, they existed even before the university. Okay, this is so ironic, but my community was used to demolish by the University of the Philippines, but we came there even before UP had asserted that they owned that land. So much of the houses built in my community right now, we owe our victory to the church, because they lead the resistance of the residents in my community. And now they don't demolish us anymore. And the Catholic and the church that in the community I live in, it's still powerful right now.
Last reaction, and after that we will have
He has questions, even this
two short last reactions.
Thank you. I have several issues to respond. The first one is I'm curious to know about the political and legal space available in Thailand, whether it's enable knowledge production from a committee like this can be recognized, and then if you change the policy, or like in the case of Indonesia, we have more difficult situation right now. We see not only constructive turn in terms of religious perspective, but also the return of authoritarian tendency. So, for instance, when the big project like dam construction or tourist development area designated as SN, strategic national project. So all security apparatus can be deployed to secure the area from local opposition. And just recently, one local leaders among indigenous people found death in strange circumstances because his activity to organize people to oppose dam construction in Flores Island. So I'm wondering to know the situation in Thailand. The second is to contrast your case in this specific community, in current community, with many situations in Indonesia, which mostly consists of multiple ethnic groups in the same community. And usually what the government try to delegitimize local resistance is to confront among different groups in the community. And this is also happened in dam construction in Flores, in Nagikyu, where different group among the community were triggered to fight each other. So this is a more difficult situation in the group. The last is about religious involvement in this kind of environmental destruction. Actually, we discuss a lot in Indonesia about the dual face of religion, because currently there are emerging awareness among religious leaders to promote green faith. Currently, several conferences in Indonesia involving different faith groups to promote green faith, green Islam, green deen, something like that. But at the same time, for instance, the biggest Islamic organization in Indonesia, like Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah, both were allocated with coal mining concession from the government, and they happily welcome this offer from the government. Although the community affected by this project will be their constituents. And also I work in Sika Regency in Flores. The situation is very, very unique because the Catholic Church stand with community with regard to opposing dam construction and also geothermal development in Flores. But the history of Catholic Church in this specific area, they also control huge area of plantation, a big plantation for coconut, etc. And this is the area where they confront with their constituent. So the way they oppose the resistance from the local community, also using religious justification. They also excommunicate their constituents. So this is also very interesting situation about the dual face of religion. On the one hand, they try to protect the nature, advance the green religious agenda, but at the same time they also involved in marginalizing people like I have described. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we still have time tomorrow to talk, but you want to make a last comment? Okay, it will be the last comment.
but I did my research on reproductive politics, religion, and state policy in the Philippines. So I thought that I'll say something. So this is not of the research, but my own independent research. And I mentioned earlier that I followed the intense national debate on reproductive health in the 2000s until 2015, and even until now. And during that time, the Catholic Church really launched a vicious campaign against contraception and reproductive health, and denounced supporters of the bill as anti-God, anti-family, and anti-Filipino. And the main issue that I saw was that they constructed the Filipino nation as a Catholic nation. And so there's a conflation between national identity and religious identity. And religious identity for Catholicism means that you have to be anti-contraception, anti-abortion, etc. And so if not, then you are anti-Filipino. But many Filipinos do not see the contradiction in being for contraception and still being Catholic. And so at that point, the Catholic Church, which is a very powerful institution in the country, really lost in a big, big way. The Catholic Church is older than the Philippine state because it was the state during the colonial period, and it's used to being powerful, and it can ask presidents, and it was able to do that in the 1980s, 1990s. But this time, because of the issue of contraception, they lost. But that said, the Catholic Church politically still supports anti-mining, human rights, etc. And remember that during the anti-dictatorship period, the Marcos, the original Marcos, it was the only institution that was left standing and fought against Marcos. And the social movement was with the Catholic Church. And so for the women's movement, during the time that the reproductive health bill was being debated, we were disappointed with the Catholic Church. Because at that point, we really saw that the Catholic Church could be progressive in other things, but when it comes to gender and sexuality, you cannot rely on the Church. So, yeah. I have an article on women's morality and the Catholic Church, but I just share that.
Thank you so much. So it's time to close the day. I'd like to thank everyone, particularly the faculty, Kunjo Tamas, who has been so patient in the last weeks to organize everything. Also Kun Tantanak, and all the faculty team. In the name of IRASEC, Jeremy, myself, we warmly thank you.